Chris, are you ready? You ready? Andrew, you ready? Jim, are you guys ready? You guys ready? Okay. Everybody's logged. Wait a minute.
I'm getting something else out. It was up north. It just,
So I go ahead and start, Michael.
awful, yes.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Northwest Local School District Board of Education to order. Chris, if you'd please call the roll.
Mr. Unger.
Here.
Mr. Harlow.
Here.
Mr. Heather.
Here.
Mr. Detzel.
Here.
Mrs. Detzel.
Here.
If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So should this jump and add agenda item or 2 minutes?
To add the agenda item to,
I'll let you go ahead and read that.
this is a motion to add an agenda item for later in the board agenda. This is being added after the agenda was published, and is to add a board item at the bottom regarding a scoreboard donation. And since it's under board items, it says the board president recommends the Board of Education approve to add an agenda item for the scoreboard donation.
So move. Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. The motion to add an item to the agenda has passed 5-0. Our next item is approval of minutes.
Yes, these are from the April 27th regular meeting. The treasurer and superintendent recommend the Board of Education approve the minutes as listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. Our next item is legislative update. Mr. Harlow.
Okay, the Ohio Senate has taken up the state's operating budget, as the testimony has largely been a reiteration of testimony heard before and responded to by the Ohio House. I expect there to be little change made to the funding formula. The Senate convened a few meetings for an advisory committee on testing, and will be coming out with recommendations which follow the state superintendent's call for a 20% reduction in test taking and test practice time. Other topics currently the subject of state legislation include the removal of certain provisions in the state fire code, which would allow for small barricade devices to be installed on doors for use in an emergency, such as, say, an active shooter situation, and sorting through competing versions of the bills, which would tighten oversight of charter schools. That's another topic that they're working on. Finally, another provision remaining in the budget would give grants to school districts which are interested in developing modules for competency-based learning, which would allow for differentiated instruction within the classroom. It would allow for students to advance on mastery of a topic, and conversely allow for more time on a topic if needed. The pilot, it's a couple other states, Maine and New Hampshire in particular, kind of moved on it as well. And it's just one of those trends on the horizon, I guess we could say. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Michael. There is no Butler Tech updates. We'll move on to the next item. Special reports. Dr. Jackson.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Mr. David Main, principal at Pleasant Run Middle School, and he's going to give us an update on his building improvement plan.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to talk a little bit about Pleasant Run and how we've been able to utilize the technology and the whole vision of technology throughout the school day. So as you know, we are aligned with the district action plan. We're looking to meet and exceed state goals in all categories, provide an environment where all students are educated in learning environments that are safest and conducive to learning. And I particularly like the third bullet here, where we talk about preparing students with academic and technical skills needed to be successful. And that really gave us a lot of vision to help our students out this year. But we first understood with the new technology, we had to help our teachers know how to use the technology. So each classroom not only received an Eno board, but they have 6 Chromebooks, and they also have a personal yoga that they're able to use. So the next step was to provide some professional development for our teachers, and we are very fortunate to have ongoing this professional development with Eric Brum from Datacom. And Eric has come to us twice a month, giving us an opportunity for all of our teachers to sit with them to learn the various ways to use the technology through instruction, looking at the data, reading the data, but also some of the new innovative ideas in order to approach our students in sort of their language with the technology. So with that, twice a month, he comes in. He meets throughout the day on teacher plans, so they can come in. Some of the elective teachers might have a different need than maybe the art teacher or maybe the math teacher. So it's been very interactive and sort of identifying the needs and ongoing. Just an idea of some topics that have come up regularly. A lot of the Google stuff has been out there, and Pleasant Run's been a good fortune to be a Google school for several years, but not only to be a school, but to utilize the ongoing changing technology. But if you look through here, not just the Gmail, but if you can kind of see all the way through the Google Sites, the apps, and one of the newest and ongoing day by day is the Google Classroom. And then of course we're able to use the technology to design in our teacher-based team meetings, and you see that through the Google Sheets on the very bottom one there. Moving right along, the building teams, we've also had an opportunity to use our BLT opportunities where the teachers come and they utilize the skills that they've learned through Eric and Google to analyze data, to look at various instructional strategies. And this is ongoing in their terms and in their language, which is always nice because they're looking for the right answers, but oftentimes they don't know how to find it. But if they're putting it in there, they're able to get it. So to develop targeted interventions based on student achievement data and ongoing consistent monitoring to determine effectiveness of the interventions. The professional development, again, is a huge part for us. I've been around a few years now, and I can tell you that this is the first time that I felt that we've received a high dollar resource, but we really received the most important piece, and that was the experts to help us use it effectively and ongoing, and that's that professional development. So again, continue to utilize instructional technology, the effective instructional practices using Marzano framework. And what I mean by that is that we're going to continue to use the technology, and through Marzano and looking at the eye observation window, I can use that piece as they use that as their instructional strategies for everyday classroom activities. Moving right along, we're hoping to see this continue to grow throughout the next couple of years for sure, but monitoring teacher utilization of technology, we're going to continue to collect various pieces of data, not only academic, but behavioral. We're able to use Dazzle information and again, kind of regurgitate that in the Google form for our teachers to have a better handle on it. And then future training and continued professional development, obviously with Google and the ongoing, and also with EnoBoard and the utilization of the EnoBoard in every classroom, and then Google Classroom, again, the apps that they provide there. And in a nutshell, that's where we are at Pleasant Run Middle School with the technology. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Main. Because we only have one main meeting, we actually have 2 of these reports. So the next agenda item is Mr. Clymer, principal at Colerain Elementary, who's also going to update the board on his school improvement plan.
Good evening. Again, I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity. I brought my team today with me. This is Adam Biedenbach. He's our assistant principal, and our instructional coach, Miss Karen Helms. And we're going to be talking this evening about data and planning at Colerain Elementary. All the TBT work that we've done on our early release days, where we're constantly looking at the instruction and the data that we're receiving from those. We're now towards the end of the school year, and the MAP data is going to become very important to us. And that's what we're going to be talking about this evening, is how the MAP data is helping with decision making at the end of the school year, and how we set up class lists, how we look at students that need additional interventions or enrichment coming into the school year in 2015-2016. So that's where we are with that. So Map data for all students is used to create balanced class lists for the following school year. Map data for individual students is used to determine if they have made adequate growth over the school year or years. This data helps school teams make decisions about school placement for next year for these students. And the planning includes grouping students throughout their day to provide opportunities, intervention, and/or enrichment for the next school year.
Okay. Again, I'm Adam Biedenbach. Thanks for having all of us here. The next couple slides are just some examples from some grade level data that we have just recently completed the spring map assessment. So you can see we're looking at first grade, and we can use this data a lot of different ways. Next year, we're going to start planning on putting them into class lists. So we can look at putting them heterogeneously. We can modify that in a few different ways depending on what our data looks like. But some things that stick out to us right away when we look at this, you can see the first column there tells you what the normative data should look like at that grade level. So we had 71 students in the fall, first grade students in the fall that were reaching that. And in the spring we had 69. And that's one piece that you can look at. And it would tell you that we kept our kids, we grew them about a year. Now if you look down a little bit further, you can see some places that we felt like we did well and some places we know we can work on. So low percentile, so we're starting to look at our kids not just as a score, but where are they fitting percentile rank-wise. So low percentile, we had 28 kids, and we're at 17 now, so we moved quite a few kids out of that lowest range, jumping out of those percentile ranges.
On the I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
On the 160.3, what does that number represent?
It's called a RIT score, so it doesn't really mean a whole lot to us. It's a score. It is a continuous scale. So when they did OAAs, a 400 in third grade might be different than a 400 in fourth grade. But on the MAP scores, a 160, so a student in first grade scores a 160, and a student in third grade scores a 160, that's the same score. That means they're reading at about the same exact level. So if I just said 160, it doesn't mean a whole lot right now sitting in front of everybody, but that's why we started looking at percentile ranks. That was something the teachers were able to look at pretty quickly and understand what that meant and where their kids were fitting, where they should be. Without taking too much time, so we can look at second grade here, because there's some things that we were really proud of here. We had 80 students in the fall that hit that benchmark normative data, and in the spring, not only did those 80 hit it, but 19 more. So 19 more, it wasn't just hit the 175, but now hit 191, which is where they should have been by the end of the year. So you can see something we're really proud of is in our high percentile rank there, we had 21 students in the 80th to 99th percentile range, and now we had 61. So a big jump there. And so that's something, as we plan for next year, we would start talking to those second grade teachers on what are you doing that's increasing our highest achieving students, because we want growth for every student, low to high. And then in third grade, you can see we were really strong in growing the students towards the low end of the achieving scale. And that has to do with third grade reading guarantee and really making a push that we're getting all of those kids and making sure they're all reading at a proficient level. So again, we had 70 students in the fall. Those 70 plus 10 more, so we have 80. But something we were very proud of there was the low percentile. We had 31 students reading in the lowest percentile range in the fall, and 19, so we moved quite a few out of that range and up. So just some examples of things that we're able to pour over with the teachers, and of course this just came back, so we just started compiling this, so these will be conversations we're having with second and third grade teachers, and what's third grade doing that's growing the lower achieving students, and what's second grade doing is growing those higher achieving students, and collaborate on those ideas to improve everyone.
And as we start to look at that as a whole grade level, we start talking about planning for next year and scheduling and what that's going to look like and how we're going to make sure that we have intervention for some kids and enrichment for other kids. It starts to get down to looking at individual students. And these are the individual student progress reports. So what's kind of nice with these now that we've been doing it for 2 years is you can look at growth over time. So we can look at this student right here and see that this student started out, this is a second grade report, so this student started out with a 148 in the fall of their first grade year, but ended up with a 184 by the end of second grade. So you can see how much growth that individual student has made. Now, whether or not they're meeting the norm grade level mean, which is that yellow bar, they're still making considerable growth themselves. Now, of course, we want them to continue on that until they are meeting those norm scores. And what's nice about this report is it is something we can look at, like I said, over time. It gives us the individual child, the district norm, the grade level norm, and then we can look at the bottom and it's broken down into the different areas of reading, so we can even see, is there a certain area where they're low average or very low, like vocabulary? Well, there's an area we probably need to intervene on. So as we're planning for intervention, that gives us some idea of where we want to plan that intervention. It also gives us a Lexile range, which is nice because that Lexile range tells us the reading level. So we can then look at that reading level and see, are they reading below grade level, are they reading in the range they need to be for that grade level, or are they reading a little bit higher? And another part of that individual student report is, oops, sorry, went the wrong way. The other part of that student progress report is this little box right here, which is very informative to you. So you can see the first grade's information down at the bottom and the second grade information at the top. And for first grade, this child was expected to grow 16 points. And this child met that growth projection. So they grew a year. But in second grade, that child was able to grow more than a year. Was able to grow 28 points and the growth projection was only 16. So that's what we're hoping to see with intervention, that we're seeing more than a year's worth of growth for our students. The other thing that we can look at, which is really nice over here, is this percentile range. And the middle score is the one that you go with, but it does give you a range for that standard error measurement, standard measure of error there. So if we look at that middle score, though, we can see that that student right now is at the 35th percentile. 50th percentile being average, that student's working still a little bit below average. So this is a student in particular that we're going to know we want to continue to intervene with next year, but a student that is making considerable growth with those interventions and should hopefully soon be on grade level and be able to not be needing intervention anymore. So that's a neat part of looking at this data on an individual basis when we're talking about those kids, and that's part of our response, our RTI process, response to intervention process, when we start looking at it at an individual level. So, any questions?
Do parents get a report similar to this?
Yes, the student progress report is sent to the parents, yes.
Those last two slides are actually all on one sheet together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's discussed during parent-teacher conferences and any kind of RTI meetings that come up, so that we're able to explain to the parents exactly what that information on that sheet is. So,
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. Our next item is report from employee organizations. Is there anyone here from the certificated or licensed employee group that would like to speak? And seeing no one, we will move on to anyone from the classified employee group that would like to speak. And seeing no one. Report from school-related organizations. Is there anyone here from a school-related organization that would like to speak? And seeing no one. Community comments. I have received 2 cards of citizens that would like to speak. One is Robert Martin. Could you?
I need to draw a card.
Can you go out in the hall and grab one? And Robert Martin, if you'd come up to the podium, please.
Extremely.
My name is Robert Martin, and I serve on the Superintendent's Report Card Committee, so I actually came to the board one other time in that capacity. I'm here tonight to speak about the failure of the levy. And it would be easy to stand here and assess who was to blame for the failure of the levy, but I don't think that's going to be very productive. In fact, I think the fact that the board, which I had some contention in the past, came together in support of the levy is something to celebrate. Nevertheless, it failed. I've got some suggestions, and I hope they're constructive suggestions in terms of what we can do to make sure that it passes in the fall, and I hope it will be on the ballot again in the fall. First of all, I think that there was a failure of communication. I don't think anybody ever said, or at least I never saw anything, specifically saying what the impact of the levy would be on a $100,000 house. That seems to be the norm in the area in terms of people assessing whether or not they're going to be in support or opposed to a levy. And in fact, if I read it correctly, I think the effect of the levy would have been positive or neutral at worst. not negative. And that was never, ever put forward. I saw a lot of signs around in support of the levy, but they all said building Coleraine, building the community. Nothing about the signs that I've seen in the past relative to other levies which said no increase in taxes. And I think that's an emphasis that you should focus upon in the fall. Secondly, I know that there are people on the board who have espoused a fiscal restraint that I guess I don't particularly support. But nevertheless, they did come together and everybody supported this levy. I think those people in particular, and you know who you are, have to be very vociferous in your support of this levy. Your supporters put you here because they apparently agree, and I don't agree, but they agree that we should exercise more fiscal restraint. People need to hear from the people on the board who espouse that position that they support this levy and that they do so very vigorously. Once those people hear that, I think they will come out and support it. You know who your supporters are. You need to gin up that support. You need to get those people to the polls, which leads me to my third suggestion. Now that I'm finally retired, I was actually appointed a judge, not a real judge, by the way, but a poll judge. I'm the deputy poll judge over at one of the large precincts here in Coleraine. 18% was the turnout at that precinct. It was abysmal. Obviously, because of my capacity there, I couldn't say anything about the levy one way or another. There was a lot of confusion about the levy. But there's one thing I think that the board could do and should consider doing. You don't need a lot of people to do it. Every couple of hours, the poll manager and the deputy poll manager, we have to post a list of who has voted. We post that list at 6:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What you need to do, I think, is have 2 or 3 parent volunteers, or some volunteers, to go from precinct to precinct to see who has voted. If you combine that with the first suggestion, which is to get your supporters out there in support of this levy, you'll know who voted, and you'll know you can then get on the phone. You don't need, I think it's more important to do this, frankly, than have people standing at the polls handing out literature. Most of the people who have arrived at the polls have already made up their mind. You need to get the people out to vote, people in support of the levy. So if you could do that, if you could get some people to go from precinct to precinct to see who has voted, and then get on the phone and call the people, the teachers, the parents, the known supporters, your known supporters, you've got constituencies that you know about, get them and make sure that they vote. Again, I hope it's on the ballot again in November. Anything I can do, I'll be happy to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate all your comments. Thank you very much.
Did you have a card, sir? Yes. Our next speaker will be Rich McVeigh, who wants to comment on the levy and has a security assistant question.
Thank you. Just kind of off that topic, I've been here the last couple of years talking about the need to improve grades, and I said to you that when I saw some positive indication of work in the school system to improve grades, I'd be the first to talk about it. I think what we saw here with the Coleraine Elementary School, with the teachers reporting and how they're using the new data and the systems that the superintendent has put in place, is a good indication that we're beginning to make some progress, and I applaud you for that. It's good work. And I know what's going on in other schools as well. I too am sad the levy failed, and I think Mr. Martin has made some good comments. I won't go over those. I see that you're beginning to look at options, and I've talked with Amy about this. I would hope that before you move quickly to considering options, you would start talking to more of the residents about why didn't they vote? What's it about? What do they really need to hear? We had some strong conviction around what we put on the levy. We had 5-0 votes. You felt strongly about it. And before you back away and you think about other options, I would have you consider that, and say what you thought it was right once, and why would you think it's the right thing to do again? Talk to some people like Mr. Martin and others and see what they tell us about what got in the way of them voting no, and what does it take to get them out to the polls. I have a question around the secondary security assistant. I read this, and it's kind of an issue of the principal in my mind, not so much adding a person to the payroll. Have we done this somewhere else, or is this a first, this security assistant?
This is not a new position. We had that position a couple of years ago, and it was a cut. We're bringing the job description back to the board because there's a piece of it I wanted to take out of the job description, which was dealing with attendance and making phone calls. We want this person to be in the hallways during bell change, during dismissal, arrival, etc., out there helping with supervision. Over the past several years, we've made significant teacher cuts. So we used to give supervision bells to teachers. In order to have one teacher for each bell for supervision, that's the same equivalent as a teacher. So it's actually more cost effective to hire a classified person than to give teachers an extra bell to do supervision. So it's not a new position. We are revising a little bit, though.
Just on principle, I heard your podcast today, the last one, and you mentioned that we've got 500 and some teachers and 500 classes. There's 1,000 people in this system who are here and are concerned about the safety and the environment of students. And I really wonder why one more person in Coleraine High School is going to make a significant difference. Is there something else that's getting in the way of having our, beyond just work time, of our teachers being more proactive in these areas? I've heard that there's concern about lawsuits. They don't want to. They're concerned about making intervention. And so, what's going on there? I mean, we have lots of people in the school, and we have principals and teachers, and we've got, you've got 1,000 in this whole school system. So why do we think that one more person, rather than maybe equipping these other people with the right skills, and maybe a guarantee, maybe they need to know that if they intervene in a situation, that they're going to have the full legal support of our staff if things turn the other way. So I need to have some help on a principle base around why we think this is the right thing to do, and not just have, because as I read the skill requirements and the tasks, it's like, well, I think most teachers and other non-classified people would fit this list of classifications. There's nothing really unique here. So it's like if you're in here in the building and you have these competencies, and I guess most people do,
Would this be just putting another person in a particular zone to help
Right.
out?
This person, it's particularly when you have a school, it's Coleraine High School, you have 2,000 students in that building at one time. Particularly during bell changes and dismissal, arrival, lunch, etc., you have a large group of students moving all at one time. So we assessed it and decided that the cut we made a couple of years ago needed to come back. We made the cut because of financial reasons with a lot of other cuts, and things have changed with the 5-year forecast. So there's a need for it because the number of students are at that building, and it's not that other people can't do it, it's that other people are doing other things. So we can't, everyone just stop what we're doing at one point to, monitor the front door because there's 35 kids in your classroom or 30 kids and 3 of them stay after to get some additional help during that bell, or they're coming in early or staying late, etc. So it's just a need because of the number of students. It's not a particularly specialized person that we're looking for, it's just another person to help with supervision.
And they're not armed like a police officer?
No.
So if they, okay. Well, I just on principle, I grew up in the old system, and the teachers were standing in the doorway, and the principals wandering the halls, and they were very, very visible. And I was getting the sense from people I've talked about that our teachers are, it's not a work issue, it's more an issue of will they be supported if they make an intervention? And if that's not the case. But there are ways to deal with that. We can put body cameras on people. There's a lot of things that can be done, that we are doing in some other areas. The other thing I would ask, I have not seen the report from the diversity training that we had about a month ago. And I wonder if this kind of move is consistent with the kind of feedback we were getting from parents and students around the culture here, or is this going to just exacerbate it? Are they going to see this as another cop? So what do you think about that?
I'll make a report at the June 8th board meeting regarding that. We had 3 focus groups that met parents, students, and staff members, and no one came up with anything regarding security guards, things like that. No one said we need more, we need less, or anything like that. That just wasn't a topic that came out of the focus groups. And we looked at issues, how to resolve them, et cetera, and that was just something that just wasn't touched upon by the various groups. So that information really isn't going to either support or reject adding additional support.
All right. Well, I would just hope that with the staff that we have, that we would be able to use more of their skill and presence, and not place the responsibility on a single individual to maintain, a secure school system. And that's kind of what this reads like.
Well, there's several people that are responsible for the security of that building. It wouldn't just be that one person. The administration we have 2 police officers there as well, so it's not just one person, but we do need additional support.
Rich, I've been up there when there's bell changes. Teachers don't stay in their rooms and not come out when there's bell change. I mean, you don't have teachers out, in the hallways, so it's not like every teacher is staying in their room when they have bell change or at the end of the day, so,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McVeigh.
Hey, Dan, I just wanted to add one thing, because Rich and Mr. Martin sort of brought it up. We were fully cognizant about the no new taxes and how that really plays well. The problem is, Michael might know more about this, there were some state law changes. Because we changed the levy, some people were actually going to get a tax increase, so we couldn't put on the signs, will not raise your taxes, even though some people, it was neutral or it was going to lower them. So we had to be very careful. And my last letter to the editor, I put many people will, which inferred some people wouldn't. That won't be an issue in November, I can guarantee you, because I don't care what we have to do, it's going to be lower, just so we can say that, because that's what gets them through, as you all know. And I appreciate what you said, you were very well spoken.
Yes, it was a situation where, for a lot of the homeowners, the way I kind of phrased it when somebody, it was brought to my attention, and I really did not hear much in the way of opposition until the last 48 hours before the levy. And I talked up among people I know. In fact, I realized as I was going on it wasn't how many people I knew, but how few. I started realizing, I was looking through the voter registration list, and so 40, 50,000 people on there, and that's just not the number of people I'm going to run into in the course of a levy campaign. But there was a lot where it just pretty much came down to the fact that we were charging people less, but they were going to pay more because the state in the last budget decided they weren't going to subsidize, which they had done over time to kind of lessen this thing of property tax, especially back in the 70s, I think is when this started. And there was a 10% subsidy, for lack of a better term, and a 2.5% subsidy implemented at a separate time. And so any new, anything on the ballot that wasn't a renewal of an existing levy was not going to get that subsidy anymore. So we brought it down, maybe went from like 4.5 mils to 4.3 mils. So that's maybe like a 5% reduction, let's say. And that's not going to offset the 12.5% subsidy going away for people. So it was a situation where, it was a 4.5 mil and now it's a 4.3 mil, but property taxes for a number of people were actually going to go up, which is why we advertise a lower tax rate. And for some people, that would have been a cut, just depending on what kind of situation they were in with their property. And I do hope next time we do it, we can be in a situation where it's an absolute cut for everybody, or if we end up deciding to do a straight renewal, then at least we can say it's a renewal levy, it's not a tax increase. There's more consistent and more familiar messaging that would go with the options that I hope we pursue in the fall.
Mr. Mark, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did get as far as the signs, I did get some feedback from a person that said, I wish it would have said build new buildings rather than building the community. I thought, of course, us being up here, we understand what that means. I think replacing those buildings would have been huge. It would have helped out with some home values. It would have brought forth some churning of the housing market with people that have little kids moving in to live near those new buildings. And so I did get that same message about building the community on the signs versus we're building 3 new buildings or whatever we're going to do, or updating other buildings. So Did you have another comment, Pamela?
I do, Mr. Martin. I absolutely agree with you as far as, I think we as a board needed to do a better job. And you are right, there are people that sit up here that have been always been opposed to levies, and we all came together. That's great we came together in this little room. Chris, I know, he wrote a nice letter in the Northwest Press, and I think that helped a lot, but I think all of us needed to do a better job, not just waiting till a couple days before and all of a sudden we have somebody putting flyers out saying to vote no. I mean, we as individual board members, we know enough people, we got elected, some of us went door to door, some of us did different things to do that. We need to do that for the levy too. They need to hear from people that in the past haven't supported this. That goes a long way. Yes, Jim and I can get up there and, we've supported every levy there ever has been, and we'll continue to do that if that's what's best for the district. But if people hear from ones that haven't supported it and are out there going to small groups, our superintendent did a great job hitting small organizations and so on and so forth, but I truly believe the community needs to hear from people that have not supported it in the past and explain why they support it now, and I think have an opportunity to turn some of those votes around. But with that said, 13% turnout, we didn't get we can't even get our parents there. It's very frustrating. I wasn't aware of what you suggested about coming and getting the lists. I think absolutely, we need to jump on that.
We'll move on to the next speaker. Is Fred Lockwood, has a comment about the levy. If you use the microphone, thank you.
Prepared some comments, some copies for you guys.
Thank you. So continuing with the same theme here, I just wanted to bring attention to the board some disturbing experience I had regarding issue 5 on the recent election. On a Monday, May 4th, the day before the election, we received the following email. The subject matter of the email was Northwest School Tax Levy. It had a link to the Board of Education issue 5, the Board of Elections issue 5, the official ballot language. And then the body of the email read, said, please read and vote. The school system is getting to the point of taxing homeowners out of their homes. Please pass a law. As you are well aware, the ballot language linked above only details the cost of the proposed new bond and tax levy and makes no mention whatsoever the existing operating levy is expiring. As such, I felt the implication of this email was that our property tax rates would be increasing as a result. I politely responded to the sender and explained that the net effect of the changes was that the tax rate would be decreasing. I also provided links to the Northwest Press articles, as well as the Northwest Local School District presentation and FAQ. Their response was that they were only aware of issue 5 from seeing yard signs. They were not pleased that this vote was occurring with no notice during an off-election cycle. Had they been more informed, they might have felt differently. I can only speculate as to how widely this email was distributed, but it's certainly clear there was at least some level of misinformation circulating. From additional conversations, it's my observation that the community had a very low level of awareness of issue 5. I also have to wonder how the typical homeowner was expected to fully understand this unusually complex set of changes with all these different things that were happening to the tax code. Details were scarce except for the coverage that I saw in the Northwest Press. It's not my intent to criticize these email instigators, the school board, or any of the hard work that went towards these ballot measure. However, I am disappointed that we lost this opportunity to build the community, and I think that a lack of community outreach was a contributing factor. Outreach.
And I would say that through Mr. Heater's efforts, there was actually a TV commercial that ran on cable, and Jim and Pam's efforts, and there was the yard signs, the billboard that was there at the high traffic location. I mean, it wasn't like we were trying to sneak something out there.
Yep.
It was.
It seems pretty clear to me there was a lot of people that were not very aware of issue 5.
And as far as the ballot language, as Michael or Pam said, as we made different comments, you can't put that in the ballot language that the other one is disappearing. So,
yep.
For people that know, that operating levy, that 5-year emergency levy is dropping off December.
Right. I
Is
still
it the
think
first half of 16 that it drops off?
Yes.
I mean, that is going away no matter what. So.
I will say one thing I saw after all these years, coming up Springdale, was the fire department there on Springdale Road had a sign for the levy, and I thought that was awesome. So I do get a little frustrated when I finally had to shut Facebook down about 1 o'clock in the morning after the election because I was so frustrated, because I will say I was reading stuff of parents that are very actively engaged. Maybe their kids have just recently graduated, you know, and I saw one of them say they didn't know there was a levy, and I just wanted to go down and knock on their door and say, excuse me, how many, I know where you live, I know how many signs you've passed, the fire department, the Northwest Press, it was in the Enquirer. I think that's just a way of, I don't know. I understand the part, there's people that, you know, vote no on levies because they're afraid of what it's going to do to affect your property taxes. But for the ones that are supportive in every other thing during the school day, that just did not make it a priority to take literally 3 minutes out of your day. It was such a low turnout. My son-in-law and husband and I were in and out of the polls in 2 minutes. And it was excuses because they didn't go vote. And I don't know what we do about it, but we'll keep trying.
You know, whenever there's a levy put on, especially when it's not in November, school boards are always accused of trying to sneak one past the voters, and we spent probably about $20,000 that was raised by levy supporters to get the message out. And, you know, I think if somebody had put, you know, picture of me with a slash over it, and it's $20,000 worth of that up and down Corning Avenue, I don't think that would be, I'd call that a secret. You know, so I think that it's certainly out there. In fact, if anything, I wonder if it's more secretive sometimes to put it on the ballot in a high turnout election, which sounds counterintuitive, and you realize that when we vote for president, we vote, you know, that gets all the attention, especially because we live in Ohio. And then you have the 9 county offices that are up in the presidential year, and the judges, and the state reps, and the Congress, and the other ballot issues, you know, the countywide ballot issues for, you know, mental health and all the other things. I mean, and there's signs for all those issues and efforts are all over the place. It almost makes you wonder if, you know, how many, because I've campaigned on election day. I mean, 2012, I was there at a poll. I was campaigning for a candidate, and I would end up talking to people who didn't even, there was, you know, students there for a levy. Oh, there's a levy? They were there to vote on something else, probably for president, but I was amazed at the number of people who didn't seem to know that there was a levy when they were showing up to vote in a presidential year.
And I guess what's hard and what's frustrating for me, and I don't want to take away from the people that did go vote and the people that volunteer in the schools every day, but we were talking about 3 brand new buildings getting built. Clearly not even the parents that have children in those elementary schools. You can't tell me they didn't know. It was talked about at open houses. It was talked about, I mean, there should have been so much excitement. If this would have been when my kids were in elementary, and I would have thought my children were going to have the opportunity to be in a brand new building, I would think just that would have had our 300 and something votes to pass this. And that's it's so discouraging, because I mean, it was going to help all the kids in all the buildings, but the feeder schools that were going to get the brand new buildings, you know, and I did hear, you know, I mean, you always have negative people that, you know, were upset because, you know, one school wasn't going to get something or this or that, but we had 3 brand new schools, and we couldn't get enough parents, just parents and employees, I'll take it a step further, and employees, that I don't believe that every employee in this district went and voted either, because if they did, I think we'd all be sitting here celebrating. So, I mean, gosh, I mean, we had the opportunity to do something so amazing at such a low price, and you know, we're not going to give up because it's for the kids, but man, I don't know. We got our work cut out.
Thank you for putting your comments in writing. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
With no other yellow cards, we'll move on to the next item, which is a certificated licensed personnel item. Dr. Jackson.
Yes, this is the secondary security assistant job description to be modified. They will no longer be in charge of attendance or assisting with attendance. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the secondary security assistant job description as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Chris, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. Certificated licensed personnel item.
Yes, we have one administrative resignation, 5 certificated resignations. We have several extra duty procedural resignations, and we have 1 athletic worker procedural resignation. The administrative resignation is actually my resignation as superintendent. I'd like to read this letter to the board, my resignation letter as well. Members of the board, I'm writing to submit my resignation as superintendent of Northwest Local School District effective July 31st, 2015. Leaving Northwest Local School District is the most difficult decision I have made. The past 7 years have been the best 7 years of my career. Northwest Local School District, particularly the students and staff, will always hold a special place in my heart. I want to thank the members of the Board of Education for the opportunities they have afforded me. I also want to encourage each of you to set aside your personal and political agendas so that Northwest Local School District can continue to improve and become the best school district in Hamilton County. When every decision is made in the best interest of students and in an open and transparent manner, the students, parents, staff, and taxpayers all win. Sincerely, Andrew Jackson, Superintendent. So the Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated licensed personnel retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to start off, I'm not sure where to begin, Andrew, but it's a big loss for the school district to see you, but we understand with you taking a job much closer down in your home Hoosier state, down there where everybody knows everybody. And I, for one, think that you've done a good job, and I think the other board members feel the same, and really wish you nothing but the best, and certainly it's going to be hard to find somebody with the good-natured humor and intellect that you have possessed and brought to us.
I'd like to add that there was a nice article in the Batesville newspaper today. I don't know if it got out a day ahead of time or not, but it has a lot of positive things to say about your new job at Sunman, and I wish you the best there as well. I realize there's been some things we've disagreed on, but as I've said repeatedly in your 2 years since you became superintendent, and most recently the last time a question came up about it at a meeting last month, I've always thought you were the one that would pull us out of our academic problems, either perceived or real, and I think, especially you can see that based on the school reports tonight, that I think we're heading in that direction, so that'll certainly be part of your legacy.
Andrew, I wish you all the best at Sunman Dearborn. I know this is a hard decision for you. As someone who's had to make some long drives myself recently, I certainly understand the desire to probably get back about an hour and a half of your time every day, time you spend with your family. And I know this is a great opportunity for you back in your home area. We've had some disagreements too, but I've always felt that we always try to work to keep the best interest of the district in mind, and I certainly wish you well. It was you were the guy who was here when I was elected, and first administrator I really got a chance to talk to and get to know, and we're definitely going to miss you here.
18 years. I've done, every single vote has been in the best interest of kids. When Kender asked me to run, he said, always vote as a mom. And I believe that's what I've always done. It's been rocky. I've tried to take the high road here lately for the kids in this district, for this levy, for the opportunity we almost had. We can all sit here and smile and we can say we know what it's like for that drive, but 5 of us up here know why we're losing the superintendent. Why, as Rich McVeigh said, our scores are starting to turn around. why things that have been put in place when Andrew was curriculum and moved on, and we selected him as our superintendent. He's made some difficult decisions in this district, but they've been the right decisions in this district. I believe this board, or at least I thought, we actually were coming together as a board. We were stopping the bickering publicly, and we, all 5 of us, were putting kids first in working for this levy. But tonight, sitting here and pretending that we're not losing the superintendent because we as a board choose not to support the person that we have hired. Our job is to hire the superintendent and the treasurer. We lost a treasurer. We're losing a superintendent because we are not supporting the decisions that we have hired him to make. And it makes me sick to my stomach. I only hope, small hope, that our next superintendent, that we learn from these mistakes and we will support the next superintendent. We're not the ones here to micromanage this district. We're here to support the person that we put in charge of this district. I don't even know what to say, Andrew. This is a huge loss for everyone, and I am truly sorry that you were put in the position that you have to leave us.
Jim, do you have any comments?
No.
With no other discussion, the motion's been moved and seconded. Chris, please call for a vote. The motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 abstention. Another classified personnel item, Dr. Jackson?
Yes, we have 5 classified resignations. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified retirements and resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. A fiscal item, Dr. Jackson?
Yes, this is a new fund that we need to establish to deposit the Building Camelot campaign funds at Northwest High School. The treasurer and superintendent recommend the Board of Education approve the new fund as listed.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I don't know, Andrew, if the question goes to you or Todd or Amy, but I know with Joe leaving the AD, it was sort of Joe's baby, the Building Camelot. How is the fund doing? I know it's a lofty goal to raise close to $1 million for the turf and the bleachers and everything else, and I've not heard an update in probably months. Is it moving in a positive direction?
Yes, we will have an update probably at the next board meeting, and part of that will be an announcement of a major donor as well. So when it's all said and done, it's close to $600,000 when we have these donations. We have a UC Health donation that was made of $200,000. We have another large donation coming from another local business, and then we have some individual donations, and then we receive some money from Kroger's as well as part of the TIF agreement. So when that's all settled, it'll be nearly $600,000.
And the goal is $1 million?
A total $1 million, but he can piece that out by project. He doesn't need it. I mean, he can get started on certain projects without having all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So has that fund already been set up? And it's, I mean, where is all that money at right now? I mean, have we received some of those donations?
Well, there's some money in it. Last I had heard, it was like $36,000.
This is just an administrative matter to establish a separate fund for it.
For the donations coming in.
Okay. Any other discussion? Chris, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. A fiscal item, Dr. Jackson?
Yes, Mrs. Wells is going to present the 5-year forecast to the board.
Okay, in May, we do the update of our October 5-year forecast and file that then with the Department of Education. So we started with our update. Where have we been and where we're at? Our unrestricted fund balance back in 2009 had dipped down to $15 million, and we ended 2014 just a little above $30 million. Our current valuation is $1.4 billion, or we receive almost $1.5 million per mil of assessed valuation. We had a reappraisal back in 2011, which we received a 12% decrease due to the state of the economy. And then the update year of 2014, we had an overall decrease of 4%, again due to still the state of the economy, but we also had a 13% increase in our agricultural values. So it offset the decrease on real estate property for a total overall decrease of 4%. For our real estate taxes, we're currently collecting at 29.83 mills of the total 51.88 voted mills in the district and the 4.33 inside mills. If we were at the 20 mill floor, we would receive inflation for all our valuation, but currently we only receive inflation on new construction. Our projected real estate taxes for the current year is almost $42 million, less delinquencies in our homestead and rollback, or about $4,600 per pupil. On our personal property taxes, the $10,000 personal property tax exemption is going away. There is a hold harmless that I'll talk about in a little bit that we're currently fighting for to see if we can keep it in the current state budget, because right now some are wanting it out and others are trying to keep it in. But we have lost annually $1.3 million due to that exemption. We collect on public utility personal property. Our current valuation on utility personal property is $47 million, and we receive on full millage for personal property about $2.5 million a year. For our unrestricted grants or foundation from the state, our state funding for fiscal year 15 was $5,800 a student. The state did a new funding formula for the 14-15 years. They took your property wealth and your income wealth to equate to a district state share index. If your valuation index is greater than your income index, they use 2/3 of your property and 1/3 income, and our state share is 38%. So we receive about $2,200 from the state per pupil, and with our taxes we're about $6,800, or a little over $1,000 additional per pupil due to local support. We receive an additional $1.5 million in economically disadvantaged funds and catastrophic reimbursement for our high needs children. On the property tax allocation, these are the funds that the state supplements for the homeowners. The 10% for your property, the 2.5% for the 2 acres your house sits on. For seniors 65 and older, there's a homestead exemption, and for new levies going forward, it's based on income. Others have been grandfathered. Any new levies, these funds revert back to the homeowner, and the state no longer pays on behalf of the homeowner. And our potential personal property hold harmless reimbursement around $600,000 is also in this line item, which is currently about $6.8 million a year. We also receive other revenue such as reimbursements, donations, interest, tuition, rent, and about $1,500 in open enrollment in income. The other financing sources are below the line, are pretty much rebates from prior years or sale of buses or other fixed assets. For our expenditures, because we are a service industry, salaries and benefits are the majority of our expenses. So on salaries and wages are about 55% of our overall expenses, or about $44 million. Our insurance, our retirement and Medicare is about 21% of our expenses, or about $17 million. Our purchase services are in our other big line item, which includes utilities, our special education program costs, open enrollment out, community school, scholarships, and other repairs and maintenance, vehicle insurance, professional development expenses. These total about 20% of our overall expenses, or about $15 million. Our students that are attending elsewhere, this is a large portion of our revenue going out open enrollment out, we have 177 students leaving for a little over $1 million. Community school, we have 453 students for a little over $3 million. And scholarships, there's 117 Peterson scholarships and 33 autism scholarships for almost $2 million. And on the Peterson scholarships, these are for students who have never attended our district, are attending a parochial private school, and now they can have funding from the district go to that private school, which is $700,000 of funding that used to come to the district that is now being sent to the private schools.
Amy, on that last slide, I know we have some students, for instance, that go to St. Rita's, some profoundly deaf students and other kids that have special needs that might be better served at a place like that. Which one of those three does that fall under?
Your special needs education program costs.
Okay, and that's when we have a special student that would, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're contracting with them and paying it out. These are for,
And we also send a number of students, do we send students to Margaret B. Rost as well?
if there are students here and we're sending them somewhere to be serviced, that's just a purchase service cost.
Right, okay.
It's not,
Does the
it's
county,
scholarship.
does the county developmental disabilities levy match any of those costs, or when we send a student with those type of needs to one of those schools?
If they're at the Department of DD, they bill us for the amount of the unit, and they base those costs based on the difference for what they're already collecting versus what the costs are to operate and
So there's a
service the students.
little help from that. Okay, thank you.
Our supplies and materials, this includes student, teacher, office, custodial, transportation supplies, are about 3% of our overall budget, or about $2.5 million. Our capital outlay includes equipment and other capital items for the district. However, our technology and bus purchase are paid out of our permanent improvement fund. They both have a schedule. Capital outlay is about 1% of our overall expenses, or less than 1%, at about $150,000. However, the master facilities plan indicated that $37 million in repairs were needed over the next 5 years to keep our buildings warm, safe, and dry. On the other expenses line item, this is just your liability insurance, audit costs, auditor and treasurer fees, the county educational fees that come out of our foundation. We do transfer $60,000 out for transportation for athletic programs out into the athletic fund. What I want to draw your attention to is line 6 on your forecast. This is your revenue over under expenses. This is the critical line on your forecast. You don't want it to dip below 0. You want to try to keep it at 0 or positive. And the lighter color lines are with levies. The darker colors are without levies. And as you can see, in 2019, even with levies, we are still almost $5 million revenue under expenses. Our unreserved fund balance, this is not restricted for specific programs or costs. This is amounts that we can spend on payroll, benefits, supplies, capital outlay items that we need to continue to operate, as well as our higher cost items such as utilities and special education needs. Again, the lighter columns are the cash balance with levies, the darker color are without levies. For a district our size, we want about 3 months or $24 million of a carryover, and in 19, we're dipping below that if we do not renew.
And that's if they don't renew the levies that come up in 17 and 19.
In 17 and 15. What is forecasted here in this presentation was version 1, which was what we currently had on the ballot. For the May ballot was 1.18 mils, and then the 2017 straight renewal. And it's still
So even with that, even if we go with what we just did, we do that in November, and let's say it passes, and then in 17, we do the renewal, leave it the same way, we're still not going to have enough by 19.
And we're still $5 million expenses over revenue in 19. So we'll have to adjust operations and plan for, but you know what you're planning.
Right.
But yeah, that we want this to be around $24 million.
Amy, does the state still want you to have a 2-month reserve? But
Yeah,
that's
best
sort of their
practice is
guideline.
45 to 60 days.
Okay.
This big, you have those summer accruals on payroll, you want to make sure you got everything covered.
Okay.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Looking at the 19 year, if both issues would pass, that would be the lighter colored bar on the graph.
The reduced mill for the current one?
Right.
Yes,
So that would be $38 million
correct.
as a year-end balance in 19, and if it doesn't, it would be 22 or 3?
Yes.
Well, Amy, I happen to know that you put quite a bit of work into this. I know I got an email from you late Saturday and sent a question back, and you responded to it Sunday, and I get the feeling you're living, eating, and breathing this stuff 7 days a week, so I really appreciate all the hard work you've put into it.
Before I go into the versions and the scenarios, are there questions just over the general forecast itself? The versions that we put out there for the board to look at have all the same top of the line actual operating revenues and expenses, and then the scenario versions have different levy options and things like that. So,
Amy, what, you hear what a school district spends per student. I mean, what is our average cost per student? When I started on the board in 2001, I want to say it was $7,500. I'm not sure about that number, but I think it was somewhere around that. What is it today?
I will get back to you on that exact number, but it's probably around 8 or 9.
Okay.
Thousand.
It just, yeah, you hear what some districts spend. I mean, people might be amazed that Mason and some of the districts with just the highest test scores actually have a very low cost per student. And, you know, a lot of it, you know, you got very strong PTAs, very strong parental involvement. So, you know, it varies, but I was just curious what our number was.
Ours is still low, I do know that.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
haven't been here
Just-
that
I'm
long.
sorry to stump
I
you
will
with that
have that
question.
number, and in
Yeah.
the future I'll know it.
Yeah, I guess all you do is just take our budget and divide it by the number of students, and that kind of gives us an idea, doesn't it?
Yes, and then they also do formula to compare districts to each other depending on the number of economic disadvantage or special needs and
Okay.
various
No hurry.
valuations, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Version 1 had pretty much what we did in May. The building bond and operating levy, and the operating levy was 1.18 mils that are in the forecast. And it also has the master facilities plan being funded out of the building bond levy, so it is not included in the forecast. Version 2 was not renewing the emergency levy in 2015 at all, letting it go, or having a bond levy. Incorporating the master facilities plan into the general fund at $6.2 million over 5 years to keep our buildings warm, safe, and dry. However, this dipped our operating balance below the 24 million threshold that we would like down to about $7.8 million. And version 3 renewed the current emergency levy, it's around $6.4 million. It incorporated the master facilities plan into the general fund at a little over $6 million, again to keep our buildings warm, safe, and dry. But it only gives us the minimum improvements. It doesn't give us any new buildings. It's just patching. So for discussionary purposes, I do have some scenarios, village and just general information.
On a time, well, I'll let you get back to your microphone. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I see on the paper that you've handed us, I was going to ask about the timeline for putting an issue on for November, and it lists some dates of June 8th, July 6th, July 13th, and 14th, which is kind of what I suspected it would be, to have various motions and get a millage amount certified by the auditor and get it back before the board for approval. So that's, I see what the dates are that you have on there, and then would have to be submitted not later than Wednesday, August 5th, which is 90 days before the election.
All the resolutions, yes.
Hey, Dan, I just wanted to throw one thing out. I know there's folks out in the community, nobody here tonight, I don't think this. but that this was some kind of, that people thought we were sneaking through. This was the primary. I mean, most years there's Congress and presidential. This was not a sneaky. Sneaky elections to me are February and August. I mean, so we're not even talking about August. These dates seem so soon. We just went through this, and now we're talking about it again. But that's the way the government works. You got to have this stuff in 90 days before. The election's November 3rd, so you can see the time frame we're under. But I just wanted to remind people this was the primary. We didn't know when we put it on, what other things might be on there. So just wanted to throw that out there.
And I did, in doing a little research for this discussion, I discovered that some of our other, I don't think the county has a general levy on this fall, and I don't think Green Township has anything, and I think Colerain Township might try to run some type of road levy or street levy. I know they're running focus groups right now, so to sit here in May and talk about what might be on in November, that's what I think would be something from Colerain. I really don't think the county has a levy on, and then Green doesn't seem to have anything, so.
Part with the five-year forecast, what's difficult here is that it's not possible for the board to really approve a five-year forecast until we know what we're doing with the levy, and the levy discussion is later in the agenda because it's not for discussion, but I think it'd be worthwhile to talk about some of that now. To me, what's critical is to find out why it failed. The problem is we don't have a lot of time to do that if we want to put one back up in November. Part of the reason why we chose May was intentional because part of the levy was an operating levy. So if it doesn't pass, you have an opportunity to pass one before it expires. And we do get that criticism that you're trying to sneak one by in May, like you said. And I did hear that through some individual emails, and I try to explain to folks when I hear that this is the reason why we're doing it. What's critical, though, is to find out why it didn't pass. And is it because the people didn't come out to vote? Are the majority of our taxpayers actually in favor of this? They just didn't show up? So is it a communication issue? Do they not like the plan? Is there something wrong with the plan that they don't like? The buildings we chose or how we chose it? Or is it simply an economics piece where they don't like the amount we're asking for? And I don't know how we get that determined in this short amount of time. And, in 30 days, we have to make our first resolution in terms of moving forward with it. So it would be possible probably in the next few weeks to try to get some of those answers, but I don't know if it would be in enough time to come back and make a complete informed decision on that. It could be that the board has to try to approve something and then go out and try to determine, what caused it to fail the first time and try to fix it accordingly without having all the information, just because of the tight timeline. Another option is to wait longer, but the problem is this is going to go off the books, and our current levy goes off the books in the end of December 31, 2015. And so ultimately, folks' tax could lower if you waited to pass something later, and then it goes back up. But no one remembers that. No one remembers that your taxes went down and it went up by less. So, really, you need to do it before it expires, which is in November. There are some different options that Amy gave you if you want to look at that real quick, that packet. It shows the 4.52 emergency that's expiring, and what we had at that top line shows a 3.15 and the 4.33 total for the operating and the bond. It's possible the board could try to increase some of the bond and decrease the operating by an equal amount, or you could try to lower it even more so that it really will be a tax savings for everyone, so it's just easier to communicate. That was part of the issue, was it was difficult to explain how the rate goes down, but not everyone's taxes were going down. And each time we tried to explain that our numbers show on a $100,000 house, if you're receiving that credit, your taxes were going to go up around $15 a year. If you weren't receiving that credit, your taxes were going to go down around $6 a year. And every presentation I made, we explained that. We had it in the article in the newspaper, etc. But it would have been a lot easier if we could just put that on the sign, will not increase your taxes, which the levy committee couldn't do because that's not a true statement for everyone. So the board may want to consider lowering the overall millage enough so that even if they're losing that credit, the rate, not just the rate, but their tax amount also goes down.
But Andrew, we still that couldn't be on the ballot language, correct?
No, but it could be on the signs. The levy committee could put that on their signs.
And it would be in the newspaper articles that a owner of a $100,000 house who's receiving the credit would pay this, and not receiving credit would pay this. And, we get message out that way, because the opposition just to this just seemed to be so late breaking. I think it was maybe those last newspaper articles that were being read where they always do quote that $100,000 home figure that the county auditor provides, that maybe that's when the confusion really started to peak up with people. Right.
But you could, or I should ask, could you put on the sign, will lower your tax rate?
Yeah, that could be on the sign, yes.
Andrew, 2 or 3 days before the election, in the Enquirer, there was an article on the different schools that had levies up, and it said Northwest. And it had the $100,000 amount, and it said it would be a $151 increase. And when I saw that, I'm thinking, how can they sit there and say that when that wasn't? I mean, I don't know, where would the Enquirer get that kind of figure based on what we were doing? Like you just said, if you had the credit, it was going to go up $15. If you didn't, or vice versa, it was going to go down $6. How can, and I think people see that. I think that's a perfect example. Yeah. That $100,000, well, Chris, your taxes are going up $151 to pass this.
That was and I think that article was confusing, because that was the cost of the new levy, but it didn't take into account that the old cost is going off. So
and I think that's something that needs to be said. Hey, the new cost is $151, but the old cost that's coming off of there was say $145. So it's going up $6 for you. I mean, maybe something like that needs to be said. I mean,
But how do you get the paper to write it?
Well, obviously, 13% of the registered voters in our district came out and voted, which is horrible.
When Jim, they were saying a $100,000 house where the levy did the poorest was maybe in the more affluent areas where people had $250,000 houses.
Right.
So times that by 2.5, and people are thinking, oh my goodness, my taxes are going to go up $350.
Well, which was not true. No. And that's, I think maybe we need as a district to get that out there. We write a letter every week to the Enquirer and to the Northwest Press and get it in there. And, maybe we've got to do something to get this through and to get our parents out there to vote. I mean, that was appalling. 13% of the registered voters voted in our district. That's low even by low turnout standards. That's low. I mean,
and I don't know, and I could be looking at this totally wrong, but to me, I don't know that it's necessary. If people thought it was too expensive, if it was an economic issue, I think there'd been a lot more no votes. I think the issue is people just didn't take the time to go vote. 13%, I don't think we can say, oh, we should have lowered it more, because I really think if people thought it was way too expensive, there'd have been a lot more no votes than what there were.
I mean, we lost by 362 votes we lost by.
I mean, you divide that by 13 schools, you're talking, 20 or 30 votes out of each building. I mean, that's sick. But why couldn't we focus on doing lower tax rate? I mean, that's telling the truth and still keep explaining, but that way, that's telling the truth. It's a lower tax rate. We can't help what credits coming on or coming off, and sometimes the more information, you just confuse people more. I don't know. I think we have to focus on getting our positive voters to go vote. I think that's the issue. It isn't like in years past where you're trying to convince the naysayers. I believe we have enough people out there that really want this. They just didn't go vote, and we need to figure out how to get them there.
And I don't know if it was Paulette or who it was, but I was listening to WLW that day, and they actually did come out and say this would actually be a lower tax for the homeowners, on election day news. And so somebody must have called them, and I guess that's what you do, is call radio stations and tell them those things. So thank you for doing that.
One other thing real quick, Dan. I guess at 9/5 started getting a little concerned. Time Warner Cable, we bought a lot of advertising with them. We will be getting a refund checked in. They screwed up, and they admitted they screwed up. We had purchased time on the District Channel, which is geared to older, more conservative voters. Well, guess what? Not a single one of them ran. And did it cost us 380 votes? I don't know, but I guarantee you it cost us some. And that was one of our major networks, because we were trying to hit the older retiree type voters, and we didn't put ads on MTV. Maybe we should have.
Well, I think that's one of the issues we have to consider is the communication plan on this. And I appreciate Mr. Lockwood's comments, because I would like to pick his brain a little bit to find out what do folks listen to, because we can talk about what we did, but it doesn't sound like it worked. And it was either the folks didn't know about it, or they thought it was going to pass because it seemed like everyone thought it was a no-brainer, so maybe they just weren't motivated to get there. We had several community meetings where we put it on our website, we put it in the newspaper, the times and the dates, and did a presentation. It was about half hour to 40 minutes long. I gave presentations to several civic groups, probably 8 or 9 of them total. We had a commercial running, we had signs, we had a billboard, but we had a couple articles in the Northwest Press. We had, Chris, I think you put 2 letters in Northwest Press. I sent a letter to Northwest Press. They all ran. So it sounds like, and then we also, the levy committee sent a postcard to every parent. So every household that had a student got a really nice postcard that clearly explained everything on this, all the buildings, the tax rates, all that stuff on there. It indicated it was endorsed by the Colerain Township Board of Trustees, fire, police. They put it on their sign. So, those are all the things we did, and it still wasn't enough to get people out. So what tool will work? And we also have some lists here that we reminded people to vote. That the district cannot tell people to go vote yes, but we can remind people to vote, and we did send something out as well on Monday. Anyone that signed up for the snow cancellation list got a reminder that there's an election tomorrow, and please exercise your right to vote. So those are all the things we did to get the message out. And so what are we missing, and what do we need to do as well to get that message out? Go ahead.
Well, I was just piggybacking on what, I think you're the one who said to us about the, we start with the 5 of us, and election day, we make the phone calls to the ones we know. Dan has a lot of different people that he talks to in his circle, and Michael and Chris and myself and whatever, and you look on the list and we see that they haven't voted, whether they got busy at work, they have a sick kid, whatever, but maybe if we get enough of us that will commit to making those phone calls, hey John, have you had a chance to vote today? This is really important, we really need you. And we try the grassroots approach with that and get as many of us. We get all the bus drivers to help us. We get all the teachers to help us. We get, any students that can help us after school. And we do this, and we make those phone calls. Short of going and knocking on doors and dragging people to the polls, I'm really not sure. I think that's the closest thing is, and not a pre-recorded thing. And it's going to take work, but starting with us. I would like to see our board president go to some of the groups in the parochial schools and talk to them and explain why you're supportive of this and why this is important for the community.
I talked to plenty of people, and we didn't lose by 360 votes. We needed to convert 182 people to win this, and there was not a whole lot of visible opposition to this. I talked to a lot of those no people. And I honestly think I probably got 40 different people to change their minds. I came home the night before the election. There was a neighbor of mine that lives 10 houses down the street sitting on my porch waiting for me to come home and wanted to know what it was all about. And he's a pretty well-known guy in the community, and I got him turned around. I really was reaching out to those people.
We just got to keep that up and do whatever we all did. We have to do even more. And we need the help from everyone. We need the employees. We need our students. We need everybody. And not just putting out signs, but but to be calling the day of election and asking if they've gone and vote, and could you really run up and vote? We really need this. I mean, if we do that, I mean, at least we know we've done everything that we can do. I don't think this has anything to do with what the actual millage was. I think it was, we've got to get our positive, supportive voters to the polls. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because I look around at the people that have been on the levy team year after year after year after year and work their butts off, and you're exhausted and it's frustrating. But I think it was Richmond Bay that said, you know, the 5 of us came together. We came together on this, and I do think that's important. So to all of a sudden now kind of to backstep and second guess whatever, you know, let's figure out what we can do and move forward with this, because this is still the plan that we all agreed on, and that will benefit every student. And maybe there's some tweaks we can do, taking some money on the operating, throw a little bit more money bond. I mean, I did hear, the only negative things I heard was, you know, is Colerain Elementary going to be the only building without air conditioning? Okay, that's a valid question. So is there a way, and I know we didn't have that as part of this, is there a way to tweak some things so that, yes, if we're going to have every elementary with air conditioning, then Colerain Elementary should have air conditioning too. So how do we accomplish that? I think those are the kind of conversations we have, and then, you know, is that feasible to take a little bit out of operating to throw into bonds? And when I say a little bit, I don't know what it would cost to air condition Colerain Elementary, but I feel confident enough when I talk to people who made comments that, well, why aren't we building a new the 2 schools that are the oldest? I was confident enough to say they might be the oldest buildings, but they are built so much better than the buildings built in the 60s. And this is why we're doing this. And I felt like we can support that argument. But when I heard the air conditioning argument, I have to say I agree. You know, so what do we do about it? Let's figure out how to do that. And again, I don't know if that's $1 million, 500,000. I don't know how much it is, but I think those are the kind of conversations we have. Then to try to reinvent the wheel when we are on such, I mean, June 8th, I mean, less than a month away. We've got to be ready to roll on a resolution.
We have figured out how to air condition Colerain Elementary. It depends on which option you choose, but it's probably going to be around $800,000 to air condition just the classrooms. So some of the common space wouldn't be air conditioned in that situation, and we would be able to pay for that out of our permanent improvement plan. So if we did move forward with a plan, the identical plan, we would be sure to communicate that you know, Colerain Elementary would be air conditioned probably next summer is what that plan would be. Another option would just be to increase the overall bond by about $1 million to pay for it that way too. I mean, there's another option. It would be very little cost to the actual rate on that, the millage on that. Another option that's out there is to add another building to the project and replace Colerain L and Colerain Middle School. In that situation, you would have Montford Heights, you know, that's about 16 years old, and then all the elementaries would be new along with Colerain Middle, and all you would have left would be the 2 middle schools, Pleasant Run Middle and White Oak Middle, and the 2 high schools that would need renovations. We have the issue with our debt limitations. We can only incur about $112 million worth of debt, and we're already at an $85 million project. So if you add $36 million to that, you're above $120 million, so we couldn't do that. But it's possible that the board could remove the renovations from the other schools as one possibility and add Colerain Elementary, Colerain Middle. So in that situation, you're up around $100 million. I think
there's very little room for error if we have to, you know, some kind of emergency or catastrophe hits.
You only have $12 to $15 million cap space to your total indebtedness. Theoretically, AV rises. Lately, it's been decreasing, but if it begins to rise again, then your level of indebtedness increases as well with that. that would be a 3.7 mil bond to do a $100 million project. So, you know, there's some options there, and if you remove the operating from this time, then you're actually decreasing the millage considerably, and then everyone would see some sort of reduction, varying levels according to what kind of rebate. But then you have the issue where those existing buildings wouldn't, you know, you need to renovate them through the permanent improvement. You'd have about $800,000 to $1 million a year to spend on them to renovate them, and they need some significant renovation. So you can't do it all. The board has to make choices in terms of that.
Could we, with the Corin, and I do believe that because my mom lives back there, and I mean, you got to look at St. Bernard's Precinct F and Coleraine, where we lost 134 to 37. I mean, there's a reason, and I think folks down there who tend to vote very conservatively, but we're kind of like, you know, we're paying all this, we pay our fair share of taxes and there's nothing in it for me in terms of a new building, and I'm thinking a K through 8 school. I mean, Rick Ladfelder had talked about that on the football field, merge the elementary and the middle school, make a K through 8, and right there in that kind of really center of the district, that very busy intersection, Poole and Springdale, and then people 2 miles down the road are going to say, you know what, I'm getting something out of this. And I mean, it's hard to make up when you're losing by 100 votes when you only have 13% turning out. You know, I couldn't believe those numbers. And where we did the worst were down there off of Springdale and over in Green Township.
Here, I have a question as far as, and I realize we can't do it all, but if we did what you just, the example you just gave, when you talk about White Oak Middle, Pleasant Run Middle, Northwest High, and Coleraine High School, we would pull everything from the bond away from that. And we talk about that would have to come out of the permanent improvement. What are we talking? Would they still see renovations that are going to benefit the students in those schools, or is that something we're going to see over 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
You know, ultimately it'd be the list of renovations that the architects put as the most urgent ones the first 5 years. We wouldn't be able to do them all, so we'd have to prioritize what's the most important. You know, we've already upgraded the technology at the 3 middle schools. They all have the interactive whiteboards and they have the Chromebooks and all that. So chances are it's going to be things like roofing, and it's going to be insulation and building envelope, things you'll get your money back on to help efficiencies, things like that. So yeah, it benefits the students because it's a more efficient building, and that money that's going towards the gas bill can be spent on programming or whatever. So in terms of that, yes. But in terms of a student noticing when they walk in that, you know, they have new lights in their classroom or something like that, no, it wouldn't benefit in that. I mean, just talking off the top of my head, not looking at it specifically, but, you know, we'd have to prioritize the most important. And when you got a leaky roof, you're going to fix that before you change the balances in the lights or whatever.
And had this levy passed, what exactly would we have seen through the bond for White Oak, Pleasant Run, Coleraine High, and Northwest?
Give me a second to open up that file. I can tell you.
While you're looking for that, I would say we had a good plan. It was put together by a fresh set of eyes with new committees and something we all 5 agreed on, and I would tend to, you know, figure out what we need to tweak to pick up that little percentage we need to get it passed, and I tend to want to stay with what we had. I thought it was a pretty well-developed and discussed plan.
I will, you know, say off the top of my head, I agree. Because again, I liked the fact that I could look somebody in the eye and say, this is going to benefit every single student in this district. And it makes me a little nervous if all of a sudden we're doing Coleraine Elementary and Coleraine Middle, and then all of a sudden taking things off the table for 4 other schools. I think, I mean, what I heard the most with Coleraine L was the air conditioning. I've heard the same concerns. I know it's brutal at White Oak with the air conditioning. Those are the kind of things that directly affect our students and staff if we could
And are more prevalent in a May election.
What?
In a May election, that's certainly more at the forefront of people's minds, especially the air conditioning.
Well, that's true too, but
I've always had a beef with Coleraine Middle and Elementary. I mean, Coleraine Elementary doesn't even have a main entrance. I mean, you got to go around the side of the building and up steps to get to the office. When I played junior high basketball, back then it was junior high, and we would have games at Coleraine Junior High School. I always was spooked out by the place. I mean, it's so old and dark, and it's. I'm just telling you my thoughts, and I think that the neighborhood where the levee absolutely got clobbered would respond very well to something new. I mean, there's fallout shelter signs on those buildings. I mean, if there was a A-bomb going off tonight, that's where I'd be headed. But that was put up in the 50s. And I don't think we have, well, maybe, but probably not that risk. But I do think that a lot of the folks, and I'm just telling from what I heard, felt that, you know, it's nice to renovate, you know, $2 million into the high school and maybe air conditioning a building or whatever, but I think they want to see something that looks good, and you know, stores put their good merchandise out front when they're trying to sell. And the grocery store, they do all kinds of studies on where to put the colorful things, and I'm just telling you what I think. So we need to have a work session. And
well, the only thing is, we
have till July. I mean, we're at May the 11th.
June 8th is a board meeting. That's when we have a board meeting. Are these, some of these I know are statutory deadlines?
Yeah, that's the board meetings lined up with the statutory deadlines to be able to meet the deadlines to file for November.
Okay, so the not to exceed amount for the bond issue, for instance, the statutory deadline isn't June 8th, but it's probably sometime between June 8th and July 6th.
July 6th is the deadline, but we meet,
Okay.
June 8th is our only meeting prior to July 6th.
Got it, okay.
you know, Chris, and I'm trying to be very open-minded, someone that, I know Jim has every election, but I've been down to St. Bernard's and I've worked in polls. I'm not sure necessarily that that would swing that polling place or not. I mean, it's hard to say.
You might have picked
Again,
up 40 votes there and 20 and all the other ones around, and then we would have won. But who knows? I mean, we thought we had a good plan, Pam.
Yeah, we did. Did you find that?
Yes.
I'm just
So,
curious.
for White
I don't
Oak-
want to get more votes in one place and then lose a bunch, not doing 4 other schools that we're going to do.
So for White Oak Middle School, in the first 5 years, we have about $2.9 million in renovation needs and about $700,000 in soft cost contingency, et cetera. So the biggest one is general finishes of just shy of $1.4 million. And I think, Dick, can you help explain what general finishes mean?
If you could, can you go to the mic, please?
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, and to introduce myself, Dick Crabiel, architect with Roth Partnership, and the Roth Lesco team put together the plan with the committees from the community, and really looked hard at what the renovations were and balancing what was more or most important. I think the phrase warm, safe, and dry was used earlier tonight. The one major item on White Oak Middle is the general finishes. There are some I want to say that the kitchen equipment is one big line item in that category. Most of it involves the ceilings and the general finishes, which include things like whiteboards and the classrooms themselves. It really does impact the look of that facility in a majority way. Many of the other schools, what we found was lacking were things like roofs and structural concerns with bricks and lintels and much more basic items. But in White Oak Middle, there were a lot of general finish needs, and so that was a large line item with that building.
The other two middle schools each have about $1.5 million. So White Oak has the most renovations needed and the most urgent. So if you added a Colerain Middle type building to the bond, then altogether your three middle schools have $6.7 million needed in renovations in the first 5 years. So you pull the Colerain Middle out of that, if you replace it, you have about $5.2 million. It would take us, with our current budget of permanent improvement, it would take us, 5 to 6 years to accomplish that. So you could do it, but you're not doing anything particularly exciting for students. You're just doing the things that are most urgent. And then your two high schools have about $7.2 million, and the board would have to figure out a way, okay, what do we need to do with that, and can we fund that some other way? And that would be difficult to figure out how to fund that. And I can pull that up real quick, like the high schools.
Did we address any kind of air conditioning at White Oak?
No, it would not include air conditioning. So the first 5-year renovations does not include air conditioning.
I think the thing is, some of these buildings are of the age where they
Right.
weren't insulated enough to
Right.
do that, and it might be better to start off with something new.
I don't know if the board wants to look at this, but this is a site plan of potentially what a Colerain Middle Elementary could look like and where it could fit, and not what it would look like, but just the footprint. Can you pass those there? So it's very possible to get one to fit in that space. And what's important is the swing space then could currently be occupied. You wouldn't have to find a place to house those students. You could actually build. And so there are some possibilities there. Again, it's just the timeline of all this is so tight. In 30 days, the board has to make some sort of decision. And with the 5-year forecast right now, the agenda item, they need to determine something with this. But this is just the update on the 5-year forecast. Ultimately, it's the October one that is the most important one. This is just a mid-year update on it. And the October forecast will have, whatever levy the board decides to put up, it can be adjusted accordingly if we change the operating or remove it or whatever. If we need to increase our budget in our 5-year forecast for improvements and paying cash out for our improvements out of our general fund instead of the permanent improvement, that's a possibility as well. So we can adjust the October forecast to show that.
So does approving the forecast tonight tie our hands or take options off the table in terms of our levy for November?
No,
Amy, you want to address that?
no. Right tonight, when you approve the forecast and we'll put the plan in that you feel reasonable tonight, and then if it changes before June 8th when we would pass the final resolution, it doesn't tie your hands. If what we did changed the forecast more than 5%, I would just have to refile a forecast. But with the amount that's in there, it's not going to do that. So we're okay as long as we just do realistically reasonable what we think we might be doing.
So what do we need to do right now to move the discussion on? Use the existing as a placeholder and better come up with something by the next meeting?
If you feel like that's reasonable. If you're nowhere near what we would do, then that wouldn't be reasonable. If it's close to a possibility, then it's probably realistic.
If we use the existing and come back with a fine-tuned number in the next couple weeks, would that?
That's fine.
So that would be version 1, building bond operating levy?
Yeah, if you were thinking no bond at all, then that would not be realistic. But if that's close to what the plan potentially would be.
And maybe just shave a little bit of the operating so we could honestly tell people this is a lower tax rate than you're paying.
Right, and we could plan for that and do that with the resolutions and filing for the levy, but for the forecast, if it's close to what our plan is.
Would that work for you, Pam, to use existing, what we just did as a placeholder and fine tune off of that, or what are your thoughts?
My gut is telling me that the original plan of addressing all the buildings, when I'm asking the whole district to support those, my gut's saying to stay that way. We don't have enough time. I mean, if we're going to all of a sudden decide on a brand new KA I just don't think we have enough time to really get focus groups and get a buy-in and be able to, I don't know. I like this as long as we can do something to address the AC at Cornell Elementary.
Do you want to pull the operating mills completely out of the forecast?
I don't know that I want to do that, seeing what you presented. That makes me nervous because we're still going to have an uphill battle in 17 when people aren't going to understand when that renewal comes up.
Right.
You know, and you just did a levy and we just support, you know, that's going to be a whole nother ballgame. So I wouldn't be comfortable pulling that whole operating off.
But the one in 17, we could renew it as is and honestly say it's a renewal.
Correct. If you, as long as you don't change it, it's a renewal,
So
and
then that
there'll be
won't
the homestead and rollback will still be supplemented by the state.
I think that's what we do.
Well, so far, I mean, unless they change that too.
Correct.
When you look at version number 1 of the 5-year forecast, the building plan that you determined to put up in November won't affect the 5-year forecast, just the operating piece.
Right.
So if you're considering doing some sort of bond and operating combination levy in November, and even if you lower it just a little bit so that we can advertise it will lower your taxes, that will adjust this slightly, but it won't be such amount that we have to take it back. So to me, it makes most sense to go with version 1 because we are obviously talking about doing some sort of bond operating levy. And then if the bond is at the same level or a little higher, it won't affect it at all. The only thing is if you drop the bond to a level that we have to increase the capital outlay line of the 5-year forecast,
Sure.
that would affect it, but it doesn't sound like we're looking at that as even an option. I don't know if they're actually in the board agenda. If you go to the current item, you can see they're attached version 1, 2, and 3. Amy, would you agree that version 1 would be probably the most prudent to
Yes,
to
based on
approve
the
for now?
discussion tonight, I would say version 1 reflects the
I'm
discussion.
just not prepared to, I mean, we're just a week post-mortem here, not even a week, and I think maybe a work session sometime late May, where I mean, Dan, I'm still...
I'm fine with that, but I just, for the purposes of moving the discussion along tonight,
I still think that, I mean...
A work session discusses the levy is probably okay, but to do the 5-year forecast now, I think is a different topic.
Yeah, well, but the timeline is really, Michael, the levy, and I just know that even when Montfort Heights, I live in, the only board member who lives in Green Township, and I grew up in Green Township, and even when Montfort Heights Elementary School was being built, the levy back in '96 or whatever year it was, the bond issue lost in Green Township, and they were building a brand new school right there on West Fork Road. And it didn't lose by much, but it lost. So you got to do something to negate a 4-1 defeat off of Springdale Road. And I just don't think putting air conditioning in a building that was built in 1929, at least the first part, I think it was 29 or maybe it was 33, we're going an 85-year-old building, is going to excite the voters out there. I just don't. So I think that's why we need to think about it. Certainly don't want to be the one to, I mean, I just think we need to think about it a couple weeks.
Do we need to have a board meeting and have a discussion item about the master facility plan and then having one action item, which would be the 5-year forecast? So we can try to make some sort of, have a discussion and maybe make some preliminary decision on the building program and then approve one of these 3 5-year forecasts based on that at that meeting. Just have it at the end of the meeting so you can make an approval without having to do one today if you're not comfortable with that. If we're going to have a meeting anyway in May, to have a work session.
I'm certainly fine with having another meeting to discuss it more. We've got a lot of agenda left this evening. But for the purposes of tonight then, do we go ahead and schedule another meeting and just kind of use this as a placeholder till then, or?
Yeah, Dan, I think we should. I mean, we need to use, so
Table?
recommend to table or to approve version 1 tonight?
Well, if you approve it tonight, that's what I'll file with the Department of Education. If you want to table it, have a special and approve something different, then I can
Well,
file.
can
I
you
just
go
have
ahead
to
and-
file before the end of the month.
So if you file this and we end up 1/10 of a mil off because of whatever we do to get that rate down, is that something you have to send in an amendment for?
No,
I-
no,
I-
just in October, it'll be updated to what we
I
actually
say
do.
just for the purposes of getting it done and taking that extra work off of you, I say I'm just one person, but use it as a placeholder and
So
get
we're
it
voting
filed.
tonight, like on version 1?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll
Chris,
make
we could certainly change it, but I mean, she needs to get her work done too.
Yes. Let's, do we need to make a motion?
Get that, take
Yeah.
action.
The treasurer and superintendent recommend the Board of Education approve the May 5-year forecast and assumptions, version 1, as discussed and listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Just to Mr. Martin, yes, we are all getting together and agreeing on something again, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Chris, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to our next item. It's a general business item. Dr. Jackson.
Yes, this is to rebid the tennis courts at Northwest High School that we discussed at the last meetings. Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the bid resolution Summer Permanent Improvement 2015 as listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Chris, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is a certificated licensed personnel item. Dr. Jackson.
Yes, we have 15 initial appointments, 1 administrative change of status, 1 change of status, several 1-year and 2-year and continuing teacher contracts. We have several extended service contracts. We have several responsibility factors and extra duty contracts, 1 event worker, 1 volunteer coach, and a resolution to hire several non-licensed coaches. I would like to note that the change of status is for Libby Stiles, assistant principal at Northwest High School, to become Corey Middle School principal. She had a conflict this evening at Northwest High School, so we'll get her here at a separate meeting to introduce her. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the certificated license personnel items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And I would just like to mention, as I always do, this has been posted online since Friday, so anyone that's wanted to see these things couldn't see them. Is there any other discussion? Chris, please call a vote. It's classified. The motion carries 5-0. Our next item is a classified personnel item.
Yes, we have 5 initial appointments. We have several 2-year and continuing contracts, and we have 1 leave of absence. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the classified personnel items as listed.
So moved. Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Chris, please call a vote. The motion carries 5-0. Curriculum and instruction item, Dr. Jackson.
Before we get to that, I do want to turn it over to Mrs. Ray, who is going to introduce our new Colerain High School Athletic Director.
Northwest Local School District would like to welcome Darren Braddix as Colerain High School Coordinator of Athletics. Darren comes to us from Cincinnati Public Schools, where he served as Athletic Director at Withrow High School from 2005 to present. Darren has a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Resources from the University of Cincinnati and a Master's in Education and Athletic Administration from Xavier University. Darren is joined here tonight with his wife, Talita, and 2 children, Darian and Brendan. Please join me in welcoming Darren to his new role.
Congratulations and welcome. The curriculum instruction item?
Yes, we have a contract with Pearson SchoolNet Assessment and Reporting, just for information for the board before you vote on it. Through Race to the Top money, the state of Ohio selected a vendor for what they call an instructional improvement system that we've been using for the last 2 years, ThinkGate. That did not work out. In fact, ThinkGate is no longer servicing schools, so we had to find a new vendor to help us with our various data that we have to collect There are SLOs that we have to complete, et cetera. So this is the contract to do this with Pearson. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the Pearson SchoolNet Assessment and Reporting System contract as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. Our next item is a student services item, Dr. Jackson.
Yes, we have an extended overnight field trip for the Northwest High School cheerleaders to go overnight to the National Federation of Cheer at the University of Cincinnati, June 26th to 29th. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the Northwest High School cheerleading field trip as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. Our next item is a membership in the OHSAA, Dr.
Yes,
Jackson.
this is the yearly resolution we need to pass to continue membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association. The superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the OHSAA membership as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. Motion carries 5-0. Our next item is the fiscal item.
Right, this is the timeline and discussion that we already had. While we're on this item, I think it would be worthwhile to pick a date to have our work session to discuss this further. I don't know if we want to look at a date next week, maybe?
We're unavailable.
You're unavailable next week. How about the week of Memorial Day? Does that kind of work?
Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think that'll work.
What night is
27th. Graduation is Friday, 7:30, the 29th, and then Saturday at 2 o'clock, the 30th.
I'm fine next week or the week after.
The Denzels can't make it next
Okay.
week, so 2 weeks from this Wednesday work for you, Jim Payne?
27th?
27th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to do earlier than 7? I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure I'm open that night. Let me make sure Nola.
Do we want to do a little earlier than 7 or keep it 7?
Yes, please.
6 would be...
6?
Well, I can't go any sooner than 6. I'm pretty sure of that.
How's that work for you, Chris?
6 is fine.
Okay, I can do 6.
Okay. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock on the 27th.
That'll be to discuss that'll be a work session to discuss this topic.
Right.
Okay, we'll move on. So we're done with that item then?
Yes.
Okay. Our next item,
Yes, we have the curriculum department that's going to present an update on changes in gifted services for next year.
Thank you. I'd like to take a few minutes tonight to share some information about gifted identification and services in the Northwest Local School District. Specifically, I'm going to be discussing changes being made to the services we provide and some of the data that will support these changes. Oops. There we go. Hit that. Okay. As you may know, the state of Ohio continues to make changes to the school report card. Gifted students is a subgroup that's beginning to receive increased attention. The report card is scheduled to have an additional indicator for gifted that districts and schools will need to meet in the very, very near future. The indicator will be based on 3 different elements. It'll be based on performance, progress, and inputs. The school or district will have to meet the indicator threshold in all 3 of those indicators in order to get the indicator, and it'll be a yes or a no. Go ahead. All right. The goal on the performance indicator, as you see up here, is for our gifted students to perform at the highest levels. More points are awarded for students who reach the advanced level. So if you look at this snapshot, this is our 2013-14 data, and it shows our students who have a gifted identification and where they're performing on the state tests. The green is the advanced level, The yellow is the accelerated level, the red is just the proficient level. Our goal is to provide enough services to our students in those gifted students that we can grow that green. One important thing to note is that the performance is measured for all students who have been identified as gifted, not just those we serve. So also noteworthy is the fact that students who meet the gifted criteria in any area at any point in their school career keep that gifted identification throughout their school career. So there are students who may achieve a gifted, based on an assessment that they've been given, achieve a gifted rating in reading in kindergarten, and they keep that gifted identification all the way through their school career. So they report as a gifted student. The second measure is the progress measure, and the goal in the progress measure is to make at least 1 year's growth with the gifted subgroup. Currently, our district has a B in that area. That was something that was reported on the state report card this year. And when you compare that rating to districts that like ours, that it's really considered a very good rating. Very often people will look at that and say to me, wow, you have a B in gifted, that's very good. So we're doing very well in that area. The next one is inputs. And this is kind of a complicated measure. It's a point system that calculates total inputs based on identification and service within gifted areas. So what they're doing is they're combining several factors, and we earn input points. And every year they're setting a goal of how many input points we have to get that indicator. So for instance, if we need to get 46 input points in a school or a district level, that's where we need to be to meet that indicator. The inputs right now, two significant areas of inputs are gifted identification and gifted services. You can keep going. All right. Right now, 13.25% of students in the Northwest Local School District have at least one gifted identification. When you look at gifted service, right now we are serving 18.8% of our gifted identified students. All right? So our goal is to give students every opportunity to demonstrate that they are gifted through testing that we provide, and actually serve as many students in these areas as we can. Move on to the next one. All right, so we have a couple action steps that we have kind of put together as a curriculum department that we continue to try to work on. First of all, we want to improve achievement for our identified gifted students by providing a continuum of services designed to assist them in reaching their academic potential. So we want to make sure that our gifted services kind of have a path and move through elementary, middle school, and high school. We want to utilize our current resources to maximize the percentage of identified gifted students who are receiving gifted services. So we want to look at what we're doing and make sure that we are maximizing the amount of students, the amount of points and the amount of input points that we're getting on that school report card. And third, we want to provide increased opportunities for students to meet the gifted criteria through grade level testing. We do not want to add any more tests to our students. That's the last thing we want to do. But if we are testing our students, we want to make sure that the tests we're using are gifted approved by the state of Ohio so that we can kind of do double duty. MAP is a perfect example of that. When we chose the MAP assessments for our students in the district, not only did we choose them because we're getting great data for them, as you saw from Corydon Elementary's presentation, but MAP is also an identified, a state-approved test that we can give to our students 3 times a year, get good data from, but it also identifies gifted students every single time we give it. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the gifted services. The data that you saw in this report is from the 2013-14 school year. At that time, the gifted services that we were providing, those students that we get credit for serving, were 4th and 5th grade language arts students in Access, and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students in language arts and social studies Access. Those are the only services that our district was able to provide. This year, we made a few changes based on some of the things that we've researched and things that we can do. We're serving 4th and 5th grade language arts Access, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade language arts and social studies Access, and we have identified all students enrolled in AP classes at the high school. And we are actually providing something called a WEP, an educational plan, a written educational plan for those students. We're providing their teachers with some professional development through the AP system, and we are able to identify those students in English, Math, Science, and Social Studies AP who have those gifted identifications as gifted served. So our numbers of gifted served students should increase, the percentage of students that we're serving. So we have some plans for next year. No. All right. We're looking at how we can maximize those services and get the services to our students. 4th and 5th grade language arts, we propose to leave that the same. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade language arts access, we're proposing to remove the social studies from that, but the reason for that is because we want to add math. If you remember the numbers of students at the very beginning on that first slide that were being served in social studies, they were very, very small. Because there are very, very few students who have that gifted identification in social studies. But we can considerably increase the number of students that we can provide services to if we start serving our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math students through something called an accelerated math and then our Algebra 1 8th grade classes, providing high quality professional development to those teachers and gearing our services to them. And then we will also continue to serve our identified students enrolled in AP classes. As far as gifted identification is concerned, I did kind of allude to this. In 2015, we will be continuing, actually we will not be doing the reading and math. It's actually the InView for, it's not the Terra Nova reading and math, it's the InView for the superior cognitive identification in 3rd and 5th grade. We have the MPG MAP testing for reading and math at K-8, 3 opportunities a year for students to do that. And then we have a teacher-parent referral testing system in all gifted areas that we will give 2 opportunities per year for parents to refer their students for testing and do any testing that they are referred for. So that gives us quite a few. The one difference in our referral that we're going to change, or things we're going to change for next year, is that we've had those referrals due in September and then January. We're going to move those referrals to after conference time so that teachers have an opportunity to discuss those referrals with parents and maybe increase the number of students that we're testing and testing the right students. So, any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Our next item is a student services item, Dr. Jackson.
So we have several items coming up that will either be handbooks or policies. So these are brought to the board as information only to be voted on at the next board meeting on June 8th. This first one is IGDE and IGDE-P, which is the pay-to-play fee that we charge students. We are recommending that we reduce that fee from $200 down to $150. The cap from $400 to $300. We believe that, and when I say we, I mean the athletic committee met and discussed this. The athletic committee believes that that will increase participation at our 2 high schools, first of all, and our middle schools as well. Secondly, we also recommend that we shift more of this money from general fund to athletic budgets. They've been struggling keeping solvent. So what will happen is of the $150, 50 will stay in the general fund and 100 will go to the athletic departments. This will allow them to be solvent for the foreseeable future. It'll cost the general fund about $100,000 a year to do this. So that's just items for information. If you read through those and have some questions, you're welcome to email me or Pauletta, who worked on it as well, or you can ask now if you have those questions.
I've got a question. Why can't we make it $100 pay to play? We can afford to take that money out of the general fund. And these, we can get more kids that can participate in sports.
If you do that, then there'll be no money in the general fund, so it'll be a $200,000 cost instead of $100,000.
I mean, what is our option here, to get more kids in athletics, or to worry about another $50 going into the general fund?
When it was done originally, it was a cost savings when it was originally.
And I get, because I was against it then, at $200, I've heard nothing but complaint. It's $200 for us, to run track or, to play tennis or whatever. I mean, I think we should try and make this as low as possible to get more kids out to participate. That's my feeling on it.
Is
And
there
I get it, other schools charge a lot more money.
Right, we are on the
But
level.
I think bottom line is to get the kids out to participate.
Is there any?
I don't know what the rest of you guys think, or... I certainly get the idea that less is more here, where we could, if we charge less, we could get more participation. I know teams obviously are kind of capped at, only so many players can make, say, the baseball team, or there's rules about the football team and things like that, but the extracurricular activity, this is, I guess, do we have the capacity to offset that? I mean, if we cut it in half, we have twice as many students in the extracurricular.
I don't know if we've done a study to know that. Off the top of my head, I would say no, it would not. We would not increase participation that much to offset.
But even if it's close, okay, so are we hearing about demand, I guess, would be band to play, or band to participate in our extracurriculars, but the cost is prohibiting? I mean, is that...
If you drop it down to $100, that means general fund gets no money. So even if it increases, you can't offset general fund because we're not getting anything. But the athletic department would get more as a result of that. So, I mean, that's one possibility.
Is there any option for a kid who really wants to play and has a demonstrated financial need that just can't come up with the $200? Is there somewhere for him to go to get that other $100?
Yeah, we do have Friends of the Student. Yeah, we have a Friends of the Student account that they can apply to and receive.
And I wouldn't expect you to know the answer to this, but what kind of participation do we have in that?
Pauletta may know that. I don't.
We usually have 4 or 5 students
That apply for that
per
help?
season, right. We don't advertise that. It is intended for families who are experiencing hardship over the last year or two for whatever reason that might be. It's a pretty detailed application. It has to come from a counselor, an administrator, an athletic director who knows a little bit about the family, or the family has come to them with some concern. So it's not overutilized in that capacity, but we did have quite a lengthy conversation with our athletic council regarding what they thought would be a fair amount of money and would increase their participation. And like Mr. Harlow said, there are caps on certain teams on how many kids you can have on the team, and you want to choose the best players. And then we have a few teams in which it's unlimited.
Thank you.
I mean, I've been coaching track this is my 11th year, and this is the smallest amount of kids we have got coming out. And, I've talked to like 8 or 9 of them. Well, we didn't want to spend the $200 to pay to play. I just think it's a disservice charging this kind of money. The idea is to get the kids out to participate in whatever sport or activity they want to do. I said it 5 years ago, and nobody did anything about it, and I think it should be $100.
If we do that, I misspoke. If we reduce it to no money going to the general fund and 100 going to each school to $100, it would cost $150,000 a year to the general fund, approximately. But I would need to hear from the other board members to see if that's something they want me to bring back to lower it down.
Well, I kind of did a body count, if you will, at the Colerain last football game I attended, and it just seemed to me, Jim, you might know the numbers, but it just seemed like a lot less kids were dressed than what were dressed 10 years ago. I mean, it used to be 75, 80 kids, and it looked like there were 50.
I don't know how many.
It just seemed smaller. That was my perception. You just didn't have the teeming hordes that you used to have. And I agree with you that 100 just sounds good. So I'd be prepared that there's other things we could adjust to get that down to that. But when you and I were there, I don't know if you participated in extracurricular, whatever. I was going to say intercollegiate, it's not, whatever, high school sports, we didn't pay anything.
Right.
And you could play whatever you wanted. Now all of a sudden kids are paying, and times are tougher now than they were then.
Sure.
So my thoughts would be, and I don't know if you have to bring it back, Andrew, but I would concur with Jim that the $100, and somehow we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think in a $90 million budget, $150,000 is something that I think we could make up. I mean, it's probably it's one of those figures that's probably baked into some of the more conservative assumptions on the revenue side when we talk about 2 of our biggest sources of revenue being the local property tax and the state property tax, because I know we kind of under budget sometimes in those areas, which is a prudent thing to do. And I think that's certainly something that we can make up if we need to.
Okay.
And it looks like that's going
We
to
can
come
bring
back
that
at the June 8th meeting, so
We'll make that adjustment to it.
when you come back, you have a
that's fine.
detail on what it would, what the value of that is. Is there any other discussion? We'll move on to our next item, which is the athletic handbook, Dr. Jackson.
Yes, these are items for information as well. You can read through that, and if you have any questions regarding the athletic handbook, please email Pauletta Crowley. She worked with the committee on this as well. There's a memo explaining the changes and then the actual handbook itself. So review that as you have time, and between now and June 8th, if you have any questions, please email Pauletta Crowley on that.
And those are posted online for anyone that wants to read those.
Yes.
So that'll be on as, when we conclude this meeting, they'll be able to read those changes. A student services item.
Another item that Pauletta worked on, there's a memo with some changes to the two dress code policies. One is the uniform dress code, and the other is just the regular dress code policy. Pauletta, do you want to say anything about these two policies?
Sure. There were minimal changes made for the uniform dress code. There was an addition of the quarter zip pullover sweaters and sweatshirt in the school colors. And then for all students, including those with uniforms or non-uniform days, there were a couple of changes. One was that for frayed or torn jeans, no skin can be showing, so there would have to be some kind of tights or something underneath those. Leggings, jeggings, tight sweatpants would have to have a top that came down mid-thigh for students to cover both front and back with those very tight pants. And then at the elementary level, many of the handbooks at the elementary level describe the straps on the shoulders as 2 inches, and so we made that uniform for all schools. Some said just no spaghetti straps, no this, no that, but nobody really described it. So it's a 2-inch shoulder strap on tank tops and tops that students are wearing. And those were the basic changes.
What are the rules on wearing sandals for students and employees?
Or I can address students. At the elementary level, students have to wear shoes that have a back strap to them. At the middle and high school level, they can wear shoes that do not. However, there is some discriminating factors. I think no flip-flops is actually in the handbook and policy, and a couple of others. But shoes do not have to have a back. Now, as far as employee dress code,
Yeah, this is students only, this dress code here. I could look into that regarding staff members. We have an administrative guideline regarding dress code for non-representative folks, so that's not board approved, but we have a handbook as well for our classified and for our certificated. That's probably addressed in. I could certainly get that information. That'll be coming to the board for next year in the next couple of meetings. All the handbooks come forward.
and I will tell you that 2 of our middle schools who have a number of stairs to go up and down with the tight stairwells, they do enforce the fact that the shoes should have backs on them, but it is not a district policy, so there are no consequences, other than they encourage it for safety reasons.
Sure.
Okay,
And they'll
thank
come
you.
back to at the next meeting for approval.
And our next item is attendance and enrollment handbooks, Dr. Jackson.
Pauletta worked on these as well. There's 2 handbooks, the attendance handbook and the enrollment handbook. There are just some minor changes, some corresponding dates moved around, and some procedural matters that we handle internally. So that'll be brought back to the June 8th meeting for approval.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is our tobacco use on property by staff members policy.
Yes, Dr. Kessling is actually ill this afternoon, but this is to go to a 100% tobacco-free campus for staff members. So smoking, e-cigarettes, any tobacco-type products would not be permitted by employees. Part of this, as you see in the memo, is a result of our wellness committee. And we have a very active wellness committee. In fact, the most recent piece of information they put out was a logo that they created for our wellness committee, and then each month we receive money from our health insurance provider to help with the wellness. So each month we send a crate of fruit to each school to try to encourage them to eat fruit, etc. So this wellness committee is doing several things. One that we are being told by our insurance provider and our wellness committee is that we need to strongly consider going tobacco-free. We're one of the few schools in the health consortium that are not. We may be the only one that are not tobacco-free. So this would go into effect on July 1. We would give some cessation information. We would not provide cessation programming for our staff. That would be their responsibility to quit smoking, but we would provide that information to them on how to do it. We have a very small percentage of staff that use tobacco products, and effective July 1, if the board approves this, they would not be permitted to do that on our property.
What is the enforcement like? You got 8,000 people at the football game on Friday night, or whatever baseball game. What is the enforcement on that if somebody, comes up out of the stands, goes back by the restrooms, and starts smoking?
This will just be for staff members. So this is
only staff
for now.
What about non-smoking on all the grounds, all the schools? Is that permitted?
For staff members or for
anybody?
We have designated smoking areas for visitors if they come to a game or whatever. There's designated smoking areas currently.
Is there signage up anywhere? Because I don't recall seeing, hey, this is a smoking area, or no smoking, and Well, our buildings are smoke-free. I mean, we're covered under state law for so many areas.
Football game or whatever. That's what you're referring to. So this will just be for staff members right now. Eventually, we need to do something like that, but this is a first step.
Yeah, what are the consequences if somebody does light up?
It would be disciplinary, just like anything else would be. So, they likely would get some sort of warning to stop. Eventually, it would be insubordination, a reprimand, etc., just like, any other violation.
Okay, thank you.
That will be brought back to the next board meeting for approval.
Our next item is community comments and questions. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question specific to something that was discussed this evening? If you could approach the microphone, please.
First of all, on the last thing, the football stadium does have no smoking signs, I believe. If they don't, I'm certain that at the football games, they do make announcements to that fact. And I
just don't recall seeing them.
And during the game, they reiterate that fact, and that's probably as a result of having infractions or what have you.
Gotcha.
So there are people that leave the stadium and go up to the parking lot, to do their thing. But as far as the stadium itself, it's smoke-free. Let's see. On the pay-to-play, I'm with you on that. I agree. But there's a lot of people in the community that they don't want to see, they think that academics over sports. They don't see it. They don't see it. They don't want to see tax dollars towards, sports.
Like Chris said, when we were in school in this district, there was no pay to play.
Right. And I'm just passing on.
And there was 15,000 students in this district, and we're down to 9,200.
I'll take it a step further. And I don't want to just focus it on sports. And it's not that we're even considering it being free. But I think studies show the more you engage kids, the better they're going to be.
I'm not just talking sports. I'm talking like show cards and marching band. That's all included in there.
But let's going to get back to another point that I'm going to get on, because I didn't speak earlier because I wanted to hear about the 5-year forecast and put that in perspective with the levy and everything. Because a lot of people's votes out there that voted no, we're not going to change those no votes, regardless of what you're going to do. A few of them you might change by dropping it a few mills, but outside of that, I think a lot of them, communication is key. Because there's people that, $900,000 on a football turf, but people don't realize that it's donor money. They think it's tax money. They're going to vote against the levy because they think you guys are wasting money on sports, which, in my opinion, even if you were spending taxpayer money, it wouldn't necessarily be a waste like they say. Because being a parent, having a student athlete myself, which is, it's a student athlete. And, if he's a football player, he's on the honor roll. What's the problem? I don't see the problem. He's keeping him out of trouble. If there's kids that aren't playing track like you're saying, because they don't have $200, but if they have $100, and they're going to play track, they're going to be busy every afternoon, every evening during the week, instead of whatever else they're going to be doing.
That's my point, by dropping it to get more
I
kids
understand.
involved
Right. That's where
at school.
Communicate those points. One of the things with the levy was what happens without a levy. Nothing gets passed. This other one expires. What happens?
But Amy has that in the report.
Yeah.
There was those last two.
That wasn't
2019.
communicated. We didn't really hear that. I know it's kind of a threat tactic, or some people perceive it as that, but it's the truth. And, this thing recently failed, so I told a lot of my friends, I said, well, you just voted no. I said, you just voted yourself a cut. What are you going to do with this extra $150 a year? And it's, the truth, is it that important? The $150 cut. So we have about approximately 9,000 students in the district.
Yes.
Do we have a count on siblings? Because 9,000 doesn't automatically translate to 18,000.
You like a household count.
Like
a household count.
A household count, correct.
Yeah, we have that. I don't have it on me, but yeah, we have
Okay. It still would be more than the 6,000 that turned out in the polls.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right.
About
It was considerably more. I think a lot of it is, parents aren't registered. I think that's important. Parents, first of all, for you to be able to vote, you need to be registered.
We have 51,000 registered voters in our school district.
Right.
And 6,000 voted.
Which is still sad.
That's horrible.
Yes, indeed. What else do I have here? So the postcard was mailed out to parents?
That was mailed out by the levy committee, not by the district.
By the levy committee?
And they've mailed it out to parents,
The
one per
parents.
household.
But not to registered voters? Or to be a
Correct.
levy committee?
They cost about $1 a piece with postage, so that's a pretty significant cost.
Oh, so, I got you.
Every voter, if you send one to every voter, it'd be $51,000.
Right.
Now, if you do one to every household that has a registered voter, it's about $32,000 or something like that. I mean, that's a significant expense to do that.
I follow there. Back to the pay to play, it's like past decisions haunt the board, and one of the things I'm trying to explain to friends of mine to vote for the levy and telling them about the plan, because they're saying it's like 35 years for this bond, it's so long, and they're going to build new schools. And I was like, yeah, they're going to build new schools, but it'll be cheaper to remodel. And I'm like, well, yes, a little bit, not necessarily. Look at the benefits of new schools, and it's not that much more. And they're like, yeah, but who presented this plan? Wasn't it these architects that last year, no offense, but they remember how the architects were hired and how that went down, and you go along now.
I didn't hear any person that is, I had my ear to the ground and talked to a lot of people, and yeah, that might have been an unfortunate set of events, but that
was
did not cost us.
That was a compromise. I heard from a few people.
Well, it didn't cost. I don't think people.
I'm not saying cost. It's just these are many of the things.
It was the turnout and where the votes came from.
When it comes down to it.
The areas we won in, some of them had 70 total votes. The areas where we lost had 200.
Right. Then, what else? Yeah, I think communication, getting the word out is key. I don't know how the ball was dropped, that people wouldn't know what it was about, or wouldn't be able to find out what it was about, because the information was on the website. Parents had the information to share it with people that didn't have the information. That's all. Busing was another question that comes up quite often, but there's no chance of high school busing returning, right?
I mean, to bring back busing in the district was what, $6 or $7 million?
I don't know what that cost is. That's long before I was here.
Yes,
but-
I don't see that happening.
Right. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, because high school busing, you have to provide busing for every student, regardless of whether they use it or not.
Correct.
A lot of them drive.
Within a mileage radius.
Right, but granted, a lot of them don't drive and would use it, okay? But along with that, you provide busing for the public and the parochial students,
Yes.
which exacerbates the cost, okay? So, provide busing and it costs an extra, what, $6-7 million?
Well, you'd have to,
Or
you'd
what
have
have
to
you. But then
bring
you have
our
these
fleet
buses-
back up to.
Well, you have these high school buses going around that are half full.
They'd be less than half full, and
full.
then people would really be ticked.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right, so I just think that's...
Well, and I guess that falls
That's a
under
good
the
point.
discussion, because she did mention sale of buses as one of the items, but staying with what was on the agenda tonight, was there any?
Well, that was, that was the reason with the
Okay.
levy.
Okay.
That's all I pretty much have, I think.
But and again, I want to thank you because you've been coming to the board meetings, and it's 9:30 at night, and the fact that you're here and you sit through all this, and then you do talk to people, whether they're for or against, I mean, that's huge. And if we can just, if one person that you talk to, maybe you changed their mind and then they said something positive to another person, I mean, we just got to keep working at that and working at that. So I want to thank you again for always being here and asking the questions and letting us know what you think, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, for your service. You'll be missed. I was saddened to hear about that, because somebody told me a week ago, that the superintendent was leaving, and I was like, that's the first I heard of it. Because a friend of mine works at something in Dearborn. He's coming here to Indiana, and I was like, oh man, I hope that's not true. And then I saw it on the agenda, and I was like, but I wish you the best. Thank you. So, thank you.
Was there anyone else that had any questions or comments on anything that's been discussed this evening? Please approach the podium.
I just want to quickly say, as a mother of 3 in the district, I'm not going to talk about the levy again, but Jenny, I want to just say, maybe we can think about ways to challenge those kindergartners and first graders and second graders who have tested gifted. I'm not a mom who loves testing, I'll be the first to admit. But I got a gifted first grader who blew his spring test score out of the water, and he was gifted in the fall. So all I want for his second grade is for somebody to take what he's got and further it. And I'm hoping that that doesn't have to wait until 4th grade.
We provide gifted services, but we provide differentiation in all of our grade levels, and we work toward that. That's what the growth and progress measure on the report card is all about, and we've been continually looking into that.
And I understand that the intervention and the enrichment for the kids who need to come out of the bottom into the top, like I understand that's the priority. But I work in the district, so I see those kids that are pulled out and from the Corning Elementary data that they provide, how effective that is. But in the last 2 weeks, after receiving the information from my son's first grade teacher, I've been thinking about like where could we plug in for those kids that are at a high level at an early age, so that he does know what the long division sign is if it comes up. He just didn't because he's a first grader. So I appreciate all your work. I'm just challenging you to think how maybe we can keep those kids interested, which is what he is, before he gets to the 4th grade. Thank you.
Could you approach the microphone, please, sir? Mr. Martin.
Just very briefly, because I will not be able to be here on the night of the 27th. I'm on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's our meeting, and I have to be there. But I would really strongly suggest that you not change the plan, and that's all I want. I would say that then, and I will say that now. I know enough to be dangerous about educational policy, but I think the K through 8 program would be rather controversial in some quarters, and to do that would not be a good idea. I just think you should stick with what you have, do some of the refinements that you talked about. And lastly, I can't tell you how distressed I am that Mr. Jackson is leaving. I wish him all the best, and we'll miss you very much. Thank you.
Was there anyone else that had any comments about anything discussed at tonight's meeting? Seeing no one, we will move on to the next item, which is Northwest Notables.
In the interest of time, I have those sent out to you. Would you like to just read them on your own, or do you want me to highlight a couple?
They're pretty impressive.
All right, I'll highlight a couple. You've heard about our robotics team and their trip to Anaheim, so I do want to highlight that. The Northwest Local School District robotics team returned from an extremely successful competition. Their team is the 2015 Carver Division champions. They placed 6th seeded in the Einstein Final Field of the championship event in Anaheim, California. They placed in the top 24 teams out of 5,000 teams worldwide. They've earned the honor of this title of division. They have not earned the title of division champions since 2001. There were 607 teams from around the world, 12 different countries represented in Anaheim. They were randomly divided into one of 8 different divisions with 76 teams in each division. After 10 randomly assigned matches for each team, 127 total matches in the division, alliances of the top 8 teams, ranked teams were formed. Our Northwest Local School District ROC team was one of those 8. They were selected by the 4th ranked team to work with 2 teams from Hawaii and another team from West Virginia. Their group won their division and finished as the 6th ranked alliance in the entire event. So congratulations to our robotics team.
Paula, can we have them come to a board meeting and like demonstrate, or is that possible?
I think we did that once, several years ago.
No, I'd like to see it again. I mean, it's different kids by now, probably.
We'll work on that. It's hard once school gets out to get them together, but we will try to see what we can do. I know they're having their dinner this evening, their awards dinner this evening up at the high school. But we'll see what we can do on that.
Okay, then Time Warner Cable Sports Channel, episode of Game Changers 11, features Colerain High School's student manager, Noah Kennedy. If you don't know Noah, if he would walk in here, you would think he was a 5th grader. But Noah is, in fact, a sophomore at Colerain High School. He is the football team manager. He has many physical health issues, but that doesn't deter him from the school spirit that he has and the enthusiasm as the team manager, head cheerleader, and in fact, if you watch this episode of Game Changer, he is on the sideline screaming and yelling at each one of those players, offering encouragement, knowing each one of them individually. It is quite impressive. You will have tears in your eyes if you have the opportunity to watch it. But this episode was nominated for a Great Lakes Emmy Award. Time Warner Cable Sports and Colerain High School are thrilled and are keeping their fingers crossed for a win at that ceremony on June 27th. So again, I believe I sent that out to everybody with the YouTube link. It is quite impressive. So I would suggest that you take a look at Noah and everything he has to overcome physically to do what he does. And then 2 former Colerain High School runners finished 3rd and 5th overall in the Flying Pig Marathon this year. Both runners came in from out of town to participate. Vicki Zeiner left, but Dr. Allison Bedingfield Delgado lives in Park City, Utah. She was 3rd overall and broke 3 hours. And Allison Zeiner Rush from Bentonville, Arkansas finished 5th overall for the women with 3 hours and 5 minutes. Both of these ladies went on to run in college, and both were part of the state title championships from 1997 to 2000. Allison Zeiner Rush was also state champ in track in 1998 and was one of the 1996 state runner-up teams in cross country before leading Colerain to 3 state titles. Allison Bedingfield Delgado, to this day, is one of only 2 athletes to be part of 4 state championship teams. So quite impressive for our 2 young ladies who ran in the pig this year. And then the rest are a number of OMEA finishes and Winter Guard finishes in the top 10, and they did quite well. So thank you.
Thank you. The Ohio Music Education Association is just as important as the rest of them.
Thank you,
There
Pauletta.
are about 120 winners there. It's taking quite a long time to announce.
Oh, we've got plenty of time. Go ahead. Thank you for your presentation. The other board item, a scoreboard donation.
It's actually a message board, Dan. I'm going to stand over here because we have some pictures. I think some might be of entertainment value. This isn't going to take more than 45 minutes. So. Do you have that laser thing you were using, Amy?
That laser thing, that's pretty high tech, Chris.
Hey, Dan. And let's see. Okay. Amy, you know how to do the pictures. Don't start the first one yet. Okay. Folks, I was up at the Colerain Hilliard football game. Oh. I was up at the Colerain Hilliard football game back in, I guess it was December. I was amazed at the lack of fan interest from Hilliard. It's the first time they've been in the state playoffs, and there must have been 400 or 500 people there. We had more people than they did. But they had this beautiful facility, and it was almost Division I AA. It was a huge stadium with a beautiful message board. And I sort of have an interest in video and things of that nature. And I thought, Colerain High School state champions, we need to get a message video board for our stadium. Well, those things aren't cheap. My class reunion, the class of 74, our reunion is actually in September of 15. Don't ask me why they didn't do it in 14. But we kicked around the idea, and we were going to do something very basic. There's 3 types of signs. You got your one color, you got your amber where you can do shadows and do pictures, and you have your full color. And I got to talking to people. Price kept going up the more I talked to folks. And but I thought if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to get something that's going to last. And Andrew had promised me that as he was leaving his last day, he was going to make a $10,000 donation. Isn't that true, Andrew? I guess not.
Yeah, the check's in the mail.
Okay. So anyway, we started some fundraising, and we've got some folks who say they're going to donate, but it's not costing the taxpayers any money. And what's the most recognizable sign that you think of when you think of iconic signs? I'm just going to ask the crowd here before Amy puts up the one that I think is the most iconic, because the company that is making our message board made this iconic sign. They're based in Utah, and they have been around since 1924. What sign do you think is iconic? When you think of signs in the United States, come on now, somebody.
The Hollywood sign.
The Hollywood sign, close, Jim. That's which one?
McDonald's.
McDonald's. Amy? That is an
I recognize that sign.
I have to admit. That sign was made by the Yesco. That's the name of the company. They're in Logan, Utah. Been in business since 1924, and they are good. The sign will outlive probably all of us. I asked the sign salesman who has done 3 NFL stadiums. He's working on the Chicago Soldier Field this year. I think he's done Buffalo Bills and a couple others. I said, what do you do when the sign breaks? He said, they don't break. So he said, I've never had that problem. Amy, if you go to number 2. Okay, this doesn't really do justice here, but this is a Chinese-made sign, a little bit bigger than the one we're going to get. You can just see, look at the guy's face there. And this is a Yesco sign. Which would you rather have in your home theater? Your bedroom? Your wherever? Okay, this is American quality. This is the cheap stuff. These things are guaranteed for like 3 years, and if they go out, you can buy them for half price. The problem is they just don't last. Yesco is, I don't know if you can use the word Cadillac anymore, Mercedes, Lexus, whatever, but it is the top of the line, and we're going to have a nice thing if the board approves this donation. Amy? This is our current sign at Colerain Stadium. You can see that it's very nice, it's big. This is 32 feet. I have become an expert on stadium signs. I mean, I'm telling you, I've been living this since like October or whenever the game was up there at Hilliard. and been to different schools. We're going to show you one of our local, Taylor. We're going to show you theirs. It's made by Yesco. The company that's selling this is out of Columbus. Their signs are in Ohio Stadium. I mean, this is how these guys are regarded. This is our current sign. You can see it's very utilitarian. It's a nice sign that Boosters donated. It's beautiful. It's 32 feet across, but it doesn't give you the stats at halftime. It doesn't do the animation, you know, the fun thing, you know, touchdown, make some noise, that kind of thing. And I thought, you know, nothing but the best for Northwest. And we were going to try to get something for Northwest High School. Maybe their board's a lot smaller, so it would have been a lot less expensive. But they wanted all their money put into the bleachers and the turf, and they didn't want a distraction. So this is our current sign. Colerain Boosters deserve recognition. They built, I don't know what the scoreboard cost, but Amy, this is the new sign. This is recognize the Boosters right here. Colerain Boosters welcome you, and kind of jazz that up. Their artists are going to improve on this. I did this. I mean, that's not exactly the most flashy LED thing, but we've got some pictures to show you in a minute. I'm a veteran. I was back with the beard and gear. Can't say I did anything like my dad, but my dad was in the 63rd Infantry Division of World War II. Served with Todd Fortune, his father, who's a Colerain Hall of Famer, in the 63rd. There's 1,100 of those men from the 63rd buried in France and Germany, and my dad passed away in November. He wouldn't want me to do this. He'd be pissed off. I'm sorry, but he would not be happy if I was doing this. But I thought that someday somebody's going to look that up and find out what the 63rd Infantry Division did. Tony Bennett, a guy by the name back then of Antonio Benito, served in the 63rd, the singer. He's 89 and he's still singing. I don't know how he's doing that. He described it as having a front seat row in hell. Germans were fanatical. First company, first division to enter Germany by land. So I thought we'd put that on there, and of course then dedicate the rest to veterans of the United States military. I think that's fitting and appropriate that we recognize the folks that make it possible for us to live the nice lives we do live in. You know, Chris, you were just in India. If you gave us a comparison, you could certainly shed some light on folks who don't appreciate this country. Amy, next picture. This is Taylor. They just did their stadium. They got a grant from the NFL. Their sign's smaller, but you can see it does the flags, you know, during the national anthem, the words come up. And that's their sign. That's a little bit smaller than what ours is going to be, but that's brand new and it's made by Yesco. And he had some other local ones, but this one is, they don't have anything next to it. We can't put ours up high because you got to have a 90-mile-an-hour wind factor, and if we put it up higher and made the thing bigger, we'd have to do $3,000 worth of improvements on the structure. So we're putting it down low and replacing that booster sign, and it'll fit and be real nice. And it's on a hill, so nobody's head are going to block it. You'll be able to see it very clearly.
Chris, the graphics will be where the flag is.
This gym will be down here. And then there'll be the booster sign here and the veteran sign here.
Yeah, but that's where there'll be some graphics.
This is, yeah, and we're going to show you some of the graphics. Okay. I've got one of them he sent me. And they're going to give us 2 custom-made Colerain graphics with cardinals and football helmets blown up or whatever, that's included, plus hundreds of animations. And I might say that Andrew has been so kind as to donate a laptop. It requires a laptop to operate. It's wireless. You sit in the press box and you punch in. And then the thing that I've been trying to impress upon the boosters is he's telling me what schools sell. Advertising space, you know, Time Out sponsored by Sam's Quick Lube, 1995. You know, and he said, you know, you're getting, you know, $600-700 an advertiser. You know how they're advertising Time Out sponsored by, Halftime sponsored by. Somebody's got to sell that, but he says it's very easy to sell. Now, I don't know if that's sales jargon, but I have a feeling that it won't be a problem. Okay, Amy, go to the video. That's just one of the, go ahead and play it again, Amy. This is just one of the animations. You know, and one will say, you know,
touchdown, make some noise, you know, the stuff you see at stadiums. I mean, it's not going to be the $10 million Paul Brown Stadium thing that's 800 feet long, but it's sure better than nothing. So with that, Amy, excellent job on the putting the pictures in the video there. I want to make a motion, and again, no taxpayer dollars are involved here. I am putting a disclaimer in here about the veteran sign not being changed as long as the donated sign is up. I don't want some future board to come in with an agenda that they maybe are anti-military or something and change it. So there's going to be a little thing on the end here that's part of the motion. But I hereby move, Dana, can I make the motion?
Unless you want me to or somebody else.
Jan, I'll
Go ahead and make it.
Okay. I hereby move that the Northwest School District Board of Education accept the donation of a 12-foot by 4-foot approximate size full-color LED message board to be installed underneath the current scoreboard at Colerain High School. As part of this motion, I ask that the right side static sign dedicated to veterans of the U.S. military never be changed or altered in any fashion, and I'm getting the legalese here, by anybody, either by any Northwest School District employee, administrator, Colerain, Northwest Booster Organization, or by the actions of any future Northwest Board of Education, so long as the donated message board remains utilized or in place on the school board structure at Colerain High School, no matter how many years that may entail. And I did cite some examples, I know that's wordy, but I sent one to Andrew about Vanderbilt University. Some people had donated money years ago, and due to political correctness, they decided, even though it was in the covenant, that the name never be changed. People decided to go ahead and change the name, and it's stuck in court. It's a real mess. So anyway, I hope that won't happen over a veteran sign, but I have it in there just in case. So with that motion, I'd like to see if somebody would second that.
I certainly would, Chris.
Thank you, Dan. And you can go from there, Dan.
Is there any discussion?
Well, first of all, as the board proofreader, I feel the need to point out that you misspelled school. Shoal? Yeah, but, okay.
Yeah, you did not.
Yes, you did.
That's okay.
But you get the point. I do get the point. How is this going to be financed? You said it wasn't. You said it was no cost to the taxpayer. Well, right now, I just bought an expensive LED sign, but help is on the way, I hope.
Well, Chris, to be clear, you have produced a personal check for
There,
this.
Amy, you've got, we've raised some money through Facebook. Some people have donated. I'm working some people over again. I have some folks that are promising a sizable donation, but it's the old, as Andrew would say, the check's in the mail. It's my happiest days of my life were at Colerain High School. And I don't have any children, and so this is my if I end up having to pay for it, and I don't think I will, or at least the majority of it. If I do, then so be it. But there's no cost to the high school. The installation, we're going to figure out a way to get it up with volunteers. My brother-in-law is a structural engineer. I've already got the electrician set up who said he'd do it for free. No cost.
And you have brought to be clear what the cost is, you've brought a personal check for
I bought a personal check, Amy's got it. How much?
Whatever that number was, 24 something?
Well, we went with a little smaller size, Dan.
Just for the record, so that people know that the district has the money and this is not a taxpayer expense.
Yes, there's no cost at all to the taxpayers other than maybe the electric to operate it, and it's LED and they don't take any electricity. So the money's there. Just get that check to the guy. The deadline issue wasn't so much getting it constructed. I talked to the guy last night. He said it's for him to come down here and get it all set up for us because he's doing all these other bigger projects. He said this is really a small project for him, and that's why he wanted to get the thing ordered so he could get down, and he doesn't know when. He said it might be a weekend, but he assures me that it will be up for the reunion and the St. X game on September the 4th. And Andrew will have to come back and see it because he's tired of hearing about it.
Does it have any Tom Brady graphics that come up?
It does, and it comes with an air compressor.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to make one other comment, Chris, about the 63rd Infantry Division. I've met your father, you never said much about him. Some of the pictures that were up on the board at his funeral were quite amazing. They look like something out of a movie, except I knew the guy who was in the movie. The picture of your father standing on top of the wreckage of a Nazi aircraft and with handing out candy to German children in the street and his group that he was there with, it certainly deserves to be recognized. And I know you didn't want to bring that up, but I can't help but to mention that.
Well, thank you, Dan. My dad...
Stuff out of a movie, except I know who the guy is in the movie.
Real life. He was in the worst 30 days without a shower. When you take a shower tonight, you guys, think about that. When you go to bed, 30 days in January of 1945, the coldest winter in 100 years, without a shower, while people are around you trying to kill you.
Well, and it's guys like him are the reason tonight's meeting is in English.
Yes.
So, is there any other discussion? And that's true, because there's people over there at that time that had very bad intentions for us, and it's guys like your father who did that. So
and there were 18,000 men in the 63rd Infantry Division, and 1,100 of them were killed, and 5,000 were wounded. So about 1 out of 3 were casualties.
I'm always reminded of the statement, if you can, it's a sign. It says, if you can read this, thank a teacher. If you can read this in English, thank a veteran. And we definitely owe a great deal of gratitude to all of our veterans, especially World War II, and especially infantry in Germany. My grandfather was in a different division, but he was in infantry. He was in Germany. He was in Battle of the Bulge, and certainly I think this is definitely something, a way to recognize our veterans like this on the scoreboard, and the scoreboard itself is going to be a great asset to the community.
Thank you, Michael.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. You have to click, Michael. The motion carries 5-0. Our next item is board member comments. Pam?
Just real quick, driving over here tonight past Northwest High School, they have all the senior banners lined up on the fence by Pippin Road. It looks really impressive. And so I just wanted to, if you get a chance to drive by it, a lot of graduating seniors, and the banners look awesome. And then just to remind everybody that Saturday morning is the Breakfast of Champions at Colerain High School, where the athletes get honored. They give out a lot of scholarships, and then they induct their athletes into the Hall of Fame.
Jim, did you have any comments, Jim?
Oh, and it is free. No. And I might know someone who's getting inducted, just saying.
Jim, did you have any board member comments?
Just one thing, I just wanted to thank Andrew for his time. I didn't make any comments earlier, but I wanted to save him to the end and just wish him good luck, and sorry to see him go.
Chris, any other comments?
Yeah, Dan, I just want to apologize for when I was up there. I started getting into that military thing where every word when you're in the military is a cuss word, I swear. I know it wasn't too off color, but that's not me to get up there, and I don't even know if you caught it, but I apologize. That was in very, very, very poor taste and low class. So if you caught it, I do apologize. But with that, again, my thoughts to Andrew. And Andrew, how long should I wait on that check before I call you?
Don't wait on it, it's coming.
Okay. We've had a good laugh about a lot of these things over the last few months, and that I will miss Andrew's quick wit and good leadership skills.
Michael, did you have any comments?
Yes, I'd like to welcome Brent Paratsky here. He's a student at St. X, and he's here at a government meeting for his working towards his Eagle Scout. He's a friend of the family, and just want to welcome him here tonight, and want to thank Andrew for all his years of service to Colerain, and we wish you all the best.
I would like to thank everybody for staying for what has been one of our longer meetings, and we appreciate your interest. Our next item is a motion to move into executive session. The board will consider a motion to move into executive session to conference with an attorney concerning disputes that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the motion to move into executive session as listed.
So moved.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please call a vote. I don't believe there'll be any action taken afterwards. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you all for coming. We will come back to adjourn the meeting.